The story begins with the fact that on the darkest night, most people are fast asleep. But some people commit murder. After all, there are those who shed other people's blood. These people were just in the forest with machine guns in their hands. The commander gave the command to hurry up and move faster. He wanted his comrades to get down on all fours and crawl without moving. One of the people replied that he understood. The commander explained that they had only 15 minutes left to evacuate. Meanwhile, another participant was sitting on a tree and talking about the target being in motion. He explained that this was the headquarters and the target had been accepted. Support must be expected. The boy who was sitting on the tree realized that something was wrong. After all, they just finished loading. He received a notification on his phone that he was just a signalman and did not need to be a hero. You need to wait for support. The boy realized that he had a chance, and there were only 50 meters left until the next goal. When the enemy approached him, the boy immediately grabbed him by the throat with his hand and neutralized him. He did the same with the second opponent and simply scattered everyone else. The boy asked what it was. He was very dexterous and skillful. He decided that this was too annoying and asked his comrade on the radio how he could be heard. The Major General requested a live video call and asked for it to be answered as soon as possible. The boy told his grandfather that he was a little busy and asked why he was calling. The grandfather began calling his grandson names and asked where he was now. Is he really on a mission again now? The grandson, of course, was in full combat readiness and had already neutralized many opponents. Then the boy asked if he knew that he had foiled drug transactions and if he had seen the video. Grandpa asked if he thought he was unaware of his stupid skills. He may be able to put them all down single-handedly, but it is very dangerous. It dawned on the grandfather, and he asked if he was really alone now and where his comrades were. Is he really doing this again and rushing ahead alone again? Meanwhile, the enemy was already taking out a sharp, long knife. But the boy was on top of him and asked where the goods were and how many people were there, whether he was guarding the warehouse. The man asked not to kill him because the goods were in the backyard. 13 packages await transport, and that's all he knows. The man asked not to kill him. Meanwhile, other guys were already running up to them and wondering who was there. The boy was angry and could not understand why he was noticed. He told his grandfather that it was his fault that he was distracted. Targets have already begun to be set on the boy in order to deal with him as soon as possible. Grandfather asked if he had just started speaking Portuguese and when he managed to learn it. That's the only thing he cares about. Grandfather asked if it would be better for him to find out about his current state of affairs. He explained that it was behind the boxes. The guys told their comrades that their enemy was upstairs and asked them to quickly grab him. Most special forces and intelligence units prefer US troops. The boy, without thinking twice, decided to activate the shock module. He rose up as high as possible and decided to deal a crushing blow to his opponents. The enemies asked their guys to be careful and watch out because someone was coming at them from above. And why not? There is more variety there. The boy asked his grandfather why he called him and asked him to stop talking nonsense. Meanwhile, the fight continued, and many bright purple lightning erupted from him. These lightning bolts simply scattered all the opponents around. The grandfather answered his grandson that he had nothing else to do because other old people and he was already of old age. But their grandchildren have already gotten married and had children. His life has been very sad since his father died, and he is all he has left. He doesn't just love field trips, so he doesn't even date anyone and has never dated girls, and what's wrong with him is not gay or him. The boy looked for signals nearby and began to search for injection modes. The information was intercepted and the boy asked if there was a problem on their side. The unknown sender said that they were on alert from a secret unit. Is there really a traitor in her group and she needs to find out who he is? The guys pointed their guns at the unknown man and wanted the traitor to die. One of them asked on the radio to report who opened fire and what was going on there. The boy decided that a voice simulator was available and he wanted this bunch of pathetic traitors to die quickly. He asked if they could hear him. The man with the walkie-talkie realized that it was his voice and asked who it was. The commander gave the command to his guys to retreat, and they headed towards the helicopter. The boy realized that the signal had disappeared and there was a shutdown. The connection failed, and where is this old fox going? The system turned on the remote control function as soon as possible. The boy thought that he could have a good play with the helicopter control center to let off some steam. He told his boss that he could no longer fly the helicopter. Then the grandfather asked the nasty boy if he had even heard what he said, or if he continued to ignore his old man. Does he really hear him? He must marry no later than 25 years of age and have children by 26. The boy asked his grandfather to discuss this normally another time, and not through a small screen. He's not really suited for this kind of conversation. Grandfather asked how dare he lecture him, and if he doesn't talk to him now, he will avoid this conversation again. He wants 5 grandchildren within 3 years and asks him to get married and stop doing this commander bullshit. He again asked his grandson if he understood him. But the boy accidentally pressed the detonation button. Is this thing really flying straight at him? There was a helicopter overhead. The boy began to run as quickly as possible. There was misunderstanding and horror in his eyes. The boy was in touch with his grandfather and said that he was now a little unable to speak and asked him to call him later. Grandfather couldn't understand if he had just hung up. Now he asked not to blame him for what happens next. Grandfather asked the captain to initiate the order. The captain immediately listened to his commander-in-chief. The rest of the guys asked their comrades to search the area immediately. Jiang Cheng should be nearby. The guys immediately accepted the order and said that they were moving forward. One of the guys asked how the helicopter managed to explode. This happened very close to them. Then the boy raised his hand up and greeted the guys and asked where they had been for so long. The pilot seemed to have fallen asleep and crashed into a tree or something, and that had nothing to do with him. Then the guys asked the others to surround him and concentrate around the perimeter to make sure that there were no witnesses or uninvited guests left and that they could get into their network. The boys said that it was just self-defense. The guys were told that they had received orders and needed to carry them out. The guy had to listen to radio channels only. The boy said that this would go into the report and he had to follow the orders of the headquarters. Then the guy asked when the last time something like this happened. He was promoted then, and he asks not to forget to write about the part with the helicopter he shot down. If he adds this to the report, he will only be pleased. Then he asked if it was from the command center, and it seemed like someone at the headquarters favored him from a higher level. The boy said that this was liaison officer Jiang Cheng. These are urgent documents from the command center, and he asks to immediately implement the command directive. The boy was very surprised if he really said that it was from the command center. He began to open the document, namely the notice of transfer to the reserve. The young master was told that they had arrived at Tian I College. The boy decided that he would remember this to his grandfather. He could not understand what kind of order this was. How could he even demand such an assignment from him, and he got out of the car thinking about it? How can he marry a candidate and have a child within 3 years? What kind of military commission is this? Meanwhile, his mother was thinking about how his impeccable son was and whether he was fulfilling his grandfather's instructions. The son asked his mother if he really had to do this, and it looked like he arrived at school too early. She asked him to behave properly. This is a very prestigious school for the children of the most elite people in the country. They pay very well, and he must behave appropriately and show his best side. The mother asked that she not hear that he was again thinking about his military tricks and that his mother loved him very much. And while the boy was talking on the phone, in the car, one of the parents asked the others to be more lively. A man with glasses saw the girl and asked her to come with them as soon as possible. The woman asked them to stop causing disturbances here. This is a very prestigious school. Meanwhile, a man with glasses began to get out of the car and approach the girl. He suddenly grabbed her from them and asked her to quickly get into the car and started screaming. She asked to be released immediately and called for help. One of the men asked to be careful with her because he didn't want to harm her. The woman screamed that she would call the police so that they would be caught. Then one of the men asked Miss Coral to stop resisting, because they are not bad people. The boy began to activate the shocker mode. He thought that even if these guys looked like hired bandits, this was not a battlefield, and he had to use a non-lethal method to subdue them. The boy approached one of the guys in black sunglasses and called him Mr. Then the guy turned to him and exclaimed that it was none of his business. He said that this should not bother him in any way. Jiang Cheng thought about how dare he, after all, this is the real world and he can't just break into him until he loses his pulse and break down the car door. There is no way he can do this, and tried to calm himself down and pull himself together to follow the plan. The guy in the sunglasses told the young man that he felt constipated. He asked what was wrong with his face and decided that he was probably scared. The guy started laughing and exclaimed that it was too late. His face twisted into a malicious grimace. The boy asked him to mind his own business next time and clenched his fist and approached him. But his opponent threw him back with a lightning strike, first grabbing him by the throat with one hand. The guy asked permission to give him another chance. If he only frees the girl and apologizes to her. Then the man was very surprised and laughed and asked if it was a joke and if he knew who he was and who he worked for. The man asked to be released immediately. The boy asked if he was really going to do this. The man asked again if he had heard him. He tried to perform a move and twist his opponent's arm. After all, he told him to let him go immediately, but the boy immediately struck him in the face. The guys around watched what was happening and clenched their fists in shock. One of them gave the command to nail him and catch this scoundrel immediately. The guys were already approaching their opponent faster and faster. One of them was behind this guy and clenched his fist to deal him a crushing blow. Meanwhile, the girl who was sitting in the car began to scream and asked to be careful. A heavy fist hit the face of this strange, very arrogant guy and he leaned far back. The rest of the guys asked their comrades what they were doing and asked them to beat him. The other guy apologized and began hitting this scoundrel again in the face harder and harder. Blow after blow flew towards the guys. One of them had already been pinned down and thrown to the floor. The boy asked if his face hurt. He asked if the guy still didn't want to apologize. While he was talking, someone suddenly came up from the other side and began clapping his hands. Jiang Cheng immediately turned in his direction, wondering who this guy was. The boy continued to clap his hands and exclaimed that he was impressed. Quite good skills, and he called him a friend. The guy explained that his name was Fang Tianhao. He asked what his name was. Jiang Cheng began to look for information about this guy. One of them asked not to be rude to young Master Fan. He asked to bow to the young master immediately. Jiang Cheng exclaimed that he now knows him. The guy replied that he was indeed Fang Tianhao. Then the second enemy asked what happened now and what he found there. The boy explained that yesterday at 12:50 he met someone interesting. He told him that he would meet Fang Tianhao before going to Tian I College. The guys became interested in what he said next and both froze in anticipation. Jiang Cheng paused for a moment and then replied that he was told that he would soon have huge problems. He crossed the path of someone who should not have done this, and this was a girl. The guy in sunglasses wanted to object, but his boss stopped him and asked him to be silent. Fang Tianhao asked how he knew who this person was. He looked into his eyes wanting to know the truth. But the guy said that he had no way of knowing, but this is what he told him. He also said that he was very unlucky this month. He also has a problem with insomnia, and even the doctor cannot help him. That's basically all he said. Then Fang Tianhao asked if this man had said anything about medicine. The guy thought that the moment that he crossed someone's road could be easily found out, since there were rumors about it, but how did he find out about his insomnia? Especially that he went to the doctor about this. Nobody was supposed to know about this. The guy with glasses couldn't understand why the young master suddenly began to behave so positively and asked what kind of medicine it was. Jiang Cheng explained that this person is an expert. He also said that he shouldn't appear in public because something connected with Germany would kill him. Fang Tianhao asked how to understand this. The system detected the nearest German vehicle. Electronics hacking has been activated and the penetration is complete. Changing engine settings to the point of overheating. The boy asked if it was something around 12:30, then if it was right now. Before he could finish speaking, the guy called his boss and pointed to the car. He said, pointing his finger at the car, that his car had just started smoking. He asked if young Master Fang had not recently bought it from a German expert. And how could this happen? Jiang Cheng only asked to take a look at it. He asked if the boy wasn't glad that he didn't have time to get into it. Fang Tianhao immediately thanked him for the information. He asked permission to meet him later. When the car was leaving, Fan's man asked what about the girl. But the guy replied that they had much more serious problems. Meanwhile, a girl approached Jiang Cheng. She took the boy by the hand and looked into his eyes and thanked him. She explained that it was Fang Tianhao, the son of Fang Wei from the Fang conglomerate. Many media and other information media projects receive financial support from them. If he finds out that he lied to him, then she is afraid that he will find him soon and it will not end well. Jiang Cheng asked her how she knew that he lied to him, and what would happen if all this was true. The girl explained that the expert who knew about Tianhao's problems was in the middle of the city, and it was difficult for her to imagine what kind of game he was playing. The boy said that she never asked what he was doing here. Doesn't she wonder who he is? He explained that he had his own reasons for carrying out the assignment. The girl asked if he was a new teacher and exclaimed that this was simply wonderful. She is also a teacher from Tian I School, and she's a Chinese teacher. Then the boy asked if she wanted to take a short test. He wanted to make a bet with her. If she can solve the riddle, then she will do something for him. When the girl agreed, he asked to listen to the riddle. Can she name 3 consecutive days without using the words Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? The girl thought for a long time and said that she could not use any of these days. But what about another language or another dialect? She racked her brains and eventually turned to the boy and asked him to tell her the answer. Jongchung said that the answer will be today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Would she be honored to see him in the future? The girl was very surprised by such a simple answer. He asked Miss Coral if she knew who these guys were. Those who bothered her knew her very well. The girl asked if he would tell him his name. The boy explained that his name was Jiang Chung. They say that this ignoramus who was next to the guy from the Fang family. He asked if she knew anything about him. The driver's name is Qian Shuo. He is a young master from the Shu family and has some problems with his father and is not interested in helping in the family business. The guy who stood next to Fan Tianhao is called Bao. He is quite arrogant and relies on the influence of his mother, who recently remarried the mayor of the city. The boy listened to the girl and said that everything was clear to him and now he knew what to do next. Meanwhile, young Master Bao was told that they wanted to take a selfie with him. Meanwhile, the boy was asked what he wanted. The sun never stopped shining and the day was simply beautiful. The boy stood opposite Jiang Chung's stepmother. She was the dean of Tian I College, and the woman's name was Mu Yu. She asked the boy what position he needed. She wanted to know so that his mother would appoint him to a suitable position. The boy thought that this was a very awkward situation. And why is he a teacher again? He doesn't know what to teach them. Crossing his arms over his chest, he looked at the girl and asked if there was a class on reconnaissance and infiltration. The girl replied that if they taught this in this college, she is afraid they would have to close the school. And then also the boy asked what about skydiving and off-road driving or shooting with firearms. But when the girl refused him, she thought that Jiang Chung really didn't belong here. The poor guy did not have a normal childhood, and the Special Forces soldier is not ready for such a difficult thing as ordinary life. In this case, Mu Yu asked to let his mother choose for him. Jiang Chung agreed and said that it would do. Then the girl asked to see his skills and said that they might well be useful. It could be something like physical exercise or something related to military training activities. Would he like to be a physical training teacher? He will be required to teach these students the basics of military training and teach them discipline and lessons in proper healthy living. As long as it is related to his health, he can handle it quite well. Meanwhile, the students were looking at something on their phones and asking them to keep their hands off the beetle. She looks really cool. The guys were just talking to each other loudly on the sports ground. One of the students said that it was very nice. Another asked to take your hands off her bug. One of the students exclaimed that they had ruined the game. Another said that he had run out of money to continue betting. He asked to be left alone. The boy thought that he needed to hold out. They are not his children and you can beat them, but he really wants to screw them over. And then 20 minutes passed. The girl introduced their new physical education teacher, Mr. Jiang Ching. In the future, he will teach a physical education class, and the girl asked everyone to greet him together. One of the students said that the new teacher looked very young. Is she really going to leave them with this guy? They told the teacher that he looked very good and asked what his name was. Miss Xiaofeng laughed and said that every day the children are becoming more and more difficult to control. Even she started to get angry when she saw them for the first time. After which she wished him good luck and said that she would leave it to him. One of the girls asked to find her bug, but the second one exclaimed that she was the first to see him. When the students continued to make noise, the boy suddenly shouted at them and asked everyone to be silent. He barked at the guys and asked for immediate silence. The disciples immediately became frightened and fell silent. The girl asked her friend to stop. Then he asked if she wanted to ask for the physical teacher's number. The guys continued to shout. Zhangcheng could not stand it and again barked at them to immediately shut up and stand still. The guys continued to talk to each other and say that they would not do this. One of the guys grimaced and exclaimed that they would not stand still. This was very stupid. The guys continued to laugh and say that they didn't know how to do this. The boy gave them an angry look. He pointed his finger at one of the students and asked him to immediately introduce himself. He looked sadly into his eyes and asked if he would not do what he had just told him. Then the guy looked at him impudently and told the teacher that he was still too young. He asked if this is how they behave with students. He asked him better not to make him angry because he is just a teacher. Zhangcheng grimaced menacingly and asked if he really thought so. He asked to come to him and explained that he wanted to teach him something. Then the guy started screaming and asking what he was doing. The boy pressed his shoulder and asked him to straighten his shoulders. After that, he hit him on the back and gave the command to pull himself up and not stand there like he was boiled. Then he kicked him in the backside and asked him to close his legs together. The disciples were very surprised and immediately fell silent. They looked together to see what the teacher would do next. It was a colorful and fabulous day outside. The boy approached his friend and grabbed his head. He began to straighten the red-haired guy's hair and exclaimed that he looked just neat now. He really gave him an incredible hairstyle. But those around him laughed and said that he looked like a monkey. But another comrade asked what kind of monkey he was because he clearly looked like a scoundrel and laughed even harder. Then the boy asked why they were laughing. Do they really want to join him? The red-haired boy got very angry and called him a scoundrel. He clenched his fist and asked how he even dared to mock him. He began to approach his opponent as quickly as possible and wanted to hit him. But the boy was no slouch and turned it off with a lightning strike. He said that the student must learn from the teacher. He did not let up and, looking at his opponent, exclaimed that first he had to earn it. The red-haired guy was already lying on the ground, holding his face and sighing. He had not yet risen from the ground, but he already wanted to insult this man. The red-haired man began calling and screaming at his opponent and talking about how he would kill him. One of the guys told the others that there was drama. The second exclaimed that Joe Kai was furious. The boy crossed his arms over his chest and looked at the guys menacingly. Since he doesn't know what respect is, he asks permission to teach him. The boy took a large coin in his hand and made a movement with his fingers. The coin flew upward towards that red-haired guy. She hit him in the throat and the guy was simply shocked by this turn of events. The red-haired man clenched his fists and looked menacingly at this boy. He said that he could not speak and asked someone to help him. Jiang Cheng asked if anyone now wants to learn military formation. He would like to train them individually, one person at a time. One of the students asked if it was an acupuncture point. The guy said that he was really handsome. One of the students told the teacher that she would be the first. Jiang Cheng was happy and said that the girls seemed to agree. What about the guys? The guys also exclaimed that they agreed. And so it started with roll call. The teacher called everyone by name and surname, and the children answered. Jiang Cheng asked Joe Kai if he had anything else to say. He came closer to him and asked him not to move because it could hurt a lot. The boy approached him and touched the back of his head with his finger. The redhead promised to teach him a lesson. He threatened that the teacher would still wait for him. The guy looked at his teacher and asked him to go somewhere with him. The guys noticed that Joe Kai was trying to lure out the physical education teacher. The second said that he would probably call his brother again. Now the teacher is screwed. Jiang Cheng thought this was interesting. Looks like there's something else going on at this school. Was the teacher really afraid and he doesn't even know how cool he is? Jiang Cheng asked where this place was. He thought about how this scoundrel dared to use the school grounds to put pressure on him, but then let him be ready to be crushed. The redhead asked him to go look after the campus toilets. He asked him not to pretend to be some kind of under-teacher, and he asked me to admit that he was scared. Jiang Cheng asked him to just bring him there. Joe Kai showed class and said that as long as his grandfather grovels before him, he will think about forgiving his family. The boy told the boy that he couldn't even imagine who he was trying to cross the road with. Joe Kai thought about what else he would show him. Does he think he's so awesome? He will see that there will be someone waiting for him in the toilet, and it is better for him not to mess with him. Jiang Cheng exclaimed that he didn't care and he still had 2 minutes before the next lesson. And here in front of us is a public toilet near the hostel. The guys were already approaching this toilet. A whole crowd gathered there near him. The guy asked his brother if this was the teacher who humiliated him today. Jiang Cheng was very surprised and exclaimed that this was Brother Hao. What a coincidence. The second one inquired by chance that this was not the guy they met this morning. The guy asked if it was the same teacher. Jiang Cheng asked Hao if he shouldn't have been at home to escape the troubles he told him about. Then the guy asked if that was true and if he was going to continue lying to his face. Or he thinks he's that stupid. This is all his fault, and since he is to blame for this, how is he going to compensate him for repairing the car? It was his uncle's favorite car. He spent more than $3 million on its renovation. Then the teacher asked the boy how much he needed and whether he would deign to accompany him. He said that there was no problem. Hao asked if he could pay and was probably afraid. That's $3 million, not $300. Hao asked the boy to return him the amount he demanded and not to play with him. Otherwise, he will definitely finish him off. Jiang Cheng told brother Hao that with these words he was hurting him and he didn't even know what he had done wrong. Previously, he just wanted to show off to the girl to make a show out of his appearance. He really didn't mean to provoke him or anything like that. Hao said that he was braver when he made a laughingstock of him. And where is all this courage when he now acts like a coward? It turns out that he is just a spineless coward. Jiang Cheng waved his hand and said that he would go after the young master. Then the guy answered him that he thought he would forgive him this time. Jiang Cheng smiled a malicious smile and began to walk towards the door. The boy walked up to the door and began to pull on the handle. Hao was about to open the door, but Jiang Cheng was behind him and put his hand on his shoulder. Hao asked if he was stupid. After all, this is the entrance to the toilet in front of them. Jiang Cheng said that it was so. He told the guy to come inside quickly. He kicked Hao and he fell straight onto the toilet with his head. He grabbed it with his hands. Zhou Kai asked the boy how he dared to do this. He gave the command to the other guys to take him. Then the guys immediately started running up to the boy, some with bats, some just clenching their fists. Jiang Cheng was preparing for another attack in his direction and moved his eyebrows to his nose. The guys rushed at him in a crowd, but the boy began to throw them in different directions. Hao sat near the toilet and silently called this abnormal teacher different names. He clenched his teeth and said that he would kill this scoundrel. The guy began to open the toilet door and, calling him names, asked him to show up and let him beat him. But when the boy opened the door and saw the picture in front of him, he became covered in drops of sweat. Jiang Cheng continued to throw the guys in different directions, hitting them with his fist and feet. Hao was shocked and could not understand how this was even possible and who he was. Did this kid really just beat up a whole bunch of his guys and not even get hurt? Jiang Cheng gave him an angry look. Hao got scared and asked him not to approach him. He warns him because Jiang Cheng knows who he is. He is the heir to the Fanshi group. The boy exclaimed that he loves new acquaintances and asks him to forget about it. Hao asks the boy not to be angry. He is a master, and he asks to forgive him. Perhaps he is interested in joining a Fanshi group. He apologized again for offending him earlier. Jiang Cheng replied that he was not interested and that he preferred being a teacher and teaching people while being free. He told Hao Xiao that he could consider his debt paid in full. Meanwhile, Zhou Kai fell to his knees and wailed in pain. He said that he thought he would throw away his skates. The guy grabbed his head with his hand and howled with fear and horror. He glanced at Jiang Cheng. The guys were just making peace. Zhou Kai asked his older brother why he was apologizing to him. Hao turned towards the red-haired man and asked him to shut up immediately. He asked to shut up his mitten until he slammed it down for him. Zhou Kai immediately moved back, becoming even more frightened. The guy asked him not to worry, because such a wonderful guy like Jiang Xiao would definitely not disappear. If he has problems in the future, he asked to call him for help. Hao promised to help him in any way he could. Meanwhile, the first bell from class rang. Jiang Cheng thought about his window in the next lesson. He began to leave the office and decided to go to the staff room to get some rest. Before he could leave the classroom, he stepped on a pen that was lying on the floor. He couldn't figure out what it was. Someone appeared near him and asked for forgiveness. A girl stood nearby, and she exclaimed that it was her favorite pen. She asked if he did it on purpose. The boy apologized and said that it was an accident. Then she asked if he apologized how he would compensate her for this loss. Jiang Cheng asked, "How about he buy her another pen after class? Would that be a good option?" The girl replied that it was okay because it was just a pen. He really shouldn't worry too much about it. And yet, he said that he broke it so he had to pay for it anyway. It was very strange to him because it was just a regular old pen, and how could it be her favorite? She must be hiding something from him. Jiang Cheng asked whether it was important to her or not. But why is this particular pen her favorite? He said that his name was Jiang Cheng, and he was the new physical education teacher. The boy said that she still hadn't introduced herself. Then the girl said that her name was Zhu Xiang. She is an art teacher. The teacher explained that she saw from afar that he had some kind of altercation with the students. Is she speaking correctly? Zhu Xiang laughed and said that this was very funny. Jiang Cheng said that students are the future crowd of their country in the future. He just taught them a little discipline and control of their emotions. The teacher asked how current students would be able to follow such rigid logic. Each of them is a little emperor and princess, and not a single student can accept such logic. Zhu Xiangsheng said that judging by what he saw, these kids were just smoking and sleeping in class. He doesn't think they took her instructions seriously. He asked where she bought this pen. The girl said that this store was quite far from here and asked if he had a car or if they would go there by taxi. 20 minutes have already passed. Huge high-rise buildings rose to the very sky. The girl showed the boy the store and they went inside. Zhu Xiangxiang laughed as she walked down the corridor. She walked up to the counter and said that she wanted this particular pen. The seller told the lady that she had such a talent for recognizing real quality. This is a pen inlaid with precious stones from Swarovski. It is also framed with gold plating, and an African diamond is installed on the mount. The seller asked if she wanted to buy this pen. How will you pay, by cash or credit card? Zhu Xiangxiang replied that the gentleman behind will pay. She asked to contact him, but the boy said that he would say no. Jiang Cheng glanced at the girl and confidently said no. Zhu Xiangxiang was very surprised and asked in what sense and what he meant. Then the boy looked at her menacingly and asked which part of the no she didn't understand. The pen he broke was definitely not encrusted with diamonds. It was an ordinary ballpoint pen, and didn't she value it because it was simply dear to her? The pen he broke wasn't worth $5. The girl exclaimed that it was her favorite pen. Jiang Cheng asked not to act like a little girl and grow up already. Does she even understand who she is talking to? He's not her boyfriend. Apparently she didn't understand something. Does he really think that she can fool him so easily, and he advises her to think about the consequences? Zhu Xiangxiang exclaimed that even after this he dared to call himself a man. It's like he's so sorry to spend some money. The boy said that she was a typical Chinese girl and really disappointed him. They are all such materialists. Then the girl became very upset and, blushing, clenched her teeth, and she suddenly grabbed his hand and asked who allowed him to leave. Then the boy turned his head in her direction and gave her a creepy look. He asked how she dared. Zhu Xiangxiang covered her mouth with her hand, a little scared. She didn't expect him to pull his hand away. The girl fell to her knees and began to look after him with a very angry, upset look. The salesman stood behind him and asked the lady what about the pen. The girl became very angry and exclaimed that there would be no deal. Jiang Cheng said that he hates such people and has no money, but they want to buy something. They even go so far as to fool young men, and this is very regrettable. How low modern women have fallen. I would like to retire from the armed forces. To meet such women is generally damn lucky. Apparently he can't find peace. The boy decided that lunch break was terribly quiet. One of the guys asked the other to defend himself and stand up for himself. The second one asked someone to stop him. After all, he is going to get into the ring. Jiang Cheng watched what was happening, and the boy was just throwing the ball into the basket. He boldly hit the ball into the basket. The guys were happy about his luck and approached him. One of them exclaimed that he had a great hit. Brother Nu Tong played well. Jiang Cheng called this guy and asked if he would mind if he joined them. He asked what the fun was in just playing and how about a real test. Nu Tong noticed that it was the teacher, Mr. Jiang Cheng, and he said that of course, and why not play? The guys asked the teacher if he could play. Not that he doubted his skills. Jiang Cheng asked the kids if they would play. There are 5 of them against 4 of them. He asked the teacher how about they give him 2 of their strong players for his team. Would that be fair enough? Jiang Cheng replied that of course he would be in the game with them. 4 of them can handle it against 5 of them. The female students exclaimed that the 2 of them could be judges. Jiang Cheng asked to wait. The boy asked the girl to hold her wallet and phone. She immediately agreed. And now the teacher began to approach the children in order to fight in the match. Zaixi's team versus Jiang Cheng's team. And then the battle was announced. The guys stood opposite each other and decided to start this game. And now there is 1 more minute left before the start of the fight. Nu Tong approached his opponent. The guys around asked to stop Mr. Jiang Cheng and not let him win. The teacher fainted and walked around him. The boy thought it was simply incredible. The guys watched the game and exclaimed that Teacher Jiang jumped, and it was just an incredible jump. He reached his hands to the basket and was called a sky god and slam dunk. Nu Tong was very surprised because they really lost in the 4-on-5 match. And it really is just incredible. The guys could not understand who this teacher was. Jiang Cheng asked the kids if they were tired. He said that they should train more if they want to get to the regional tournament. He has great talent in basketball, and he can be proud of it. The boy asked to call him if he needed additional classes and laughed. Nu Tong privately called him a huge upstart. Of course, he will call him and teach him a lesson next time. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he decided to do it. And then later at night, in a small house, the light was on in Jiang Cheng's room. The teacher decided to take a shower after gym class. It was very refreshing. He realized that the match was good and the guy had potential. It was really fun, not comparable to the battlefield, but still. He thought that it was already midnight, and who was itching to call at such a late hour? He held the phone in his hand and noticed that an unknown number was calling. Someone is clearly being cautious, but he doesn't care. Jiang Cheng decided to just pick up the phone and see who it was. He answered the call. Jiang Cheng realized that it was the girl who was near the basketball court. He couldn't understand why she was calling him. She must have gotten into some trouble. He asked her why she called so late at night. The girl asked to help them. She asked to save them because they don't know what to do. They are somewhere in an institution called the Black Ball, and it is very dark and scary. She began to explain that they arrived very late, and unexpectedly the connection was lost. The boy decided that things were very bad and quickly ran to the taxi car. Before he could get close to the car, the door opened and asked their driver to start the car. He asked to be taken to a black bar, and the sooner the better. His kids are in trouble, and so the driver rushed as fast as he could to this black bar. He couldn't figure out where the girls were. Jiang Cheng did not let go of the phone. The boy peered in front of him for a long time and finally found his students. Students were sitting at a table opposite him. There was plenty of food and drink on the table. The teacher began to come closer to his students and saw Fiona in front of him. He was very surprised and could not understand what she was doing here. Jiang Cheng began to approach the guys. The girl who was sitting next to one guy was very sad. Tears were flowing from her eyes and she was a little red. The girl glanced at the boy. She told teacher Jiang that he finally came to them and was happy about it. The guys stood up and one of them asked who he was. Another asked who he was staring at and if he was looking for trouble. The teacher told the children that the girls who were sitting with them were his students. He asks them to leave before he gets angry. The boy explained that he came here to pick them up and send them home. He asked the bandits if they understood him. One of them with a gold chain around his neck asked who he thought he was and began to come closer to him. Jiang Cheng explained again that he had already told them that he was their teacher. He asked if he was deaf and can't he see that they are scared? He asks to let them go home. And anyway, why are they having fun with underage girls here? The boy exclaimed that he was taking them right now. But one of the bandits asked him to shut up because he is the boss here and will do as he says. And he is so quick and thinks that he can talk to him so easily and impudently. The boy asked How Wei Wei what was going on here. The girl replied that these people forced her to drink alcohol, but she really didn't want to do it. She would never drink in the future, but she had no intention of touching alcohol now. The guys did it all and they want to force her to drink it all. Jiang Cheng thought that these guys were completely crazy. They even forced girls to drink alcohol. The boy asked one of the guys who he was. Then the guy replied that his name was Qing Hu and asked how he thought to resolve this situation. Jiang Cheng replied that since they were under his care, he would take responsibility for them. As their teacher, he has an obligation to them. Then the bandit replied that since he had already come for him, he would not beat around the bush. He pointed to a dozen bottles that were on the table and said that he wanted him to drink them. Jiang Cheng glanced at the table and counted 24 bottles of beer. He just laughed in response. Then the guy said that he was screwed. He asked if he thought he was such a tough nut to crack and asked him to drink until he died. He asked to see how this fool ruined his own liver. And under no circumstances let them go until he drinks everything. Then the boy asked these bandits not to be angry if he enjoyed this beer himself. So he started. Jiang Cheng began to drink glass after glass, and the guys thought about who he even was. One of them said that the boy drank 4 glasses in one sitting. That's already 2 bottles. The girls were left to count one by one, and now 10 bottles had already been drunk. One of the students asked if the teacher would be okay if he drank so much. And now, the 14th bottle has arrived. The bandits were shocked that he was still drinking. But what was wrong and why did she stop him? The girl asked him to stop mocking him and said, but she would drink the rest for him. But the boss said that it wouldn't work out and he wanted the guy to drink it all himself. Then he asked Mr. Teacher if he wanted her to drink the remaining bottles for him. Jiang Cheng told the boss that he had drunk too much and needed to take a leak. He asked where the toilet was. The boy headed towards the door to where the toilet was. Suddenly, he noticed and heard something. His look changed and he was intoxicated. He looked towards Fiona and noticed that she was completely in souls. But the girl asked for more beer. She explained that she could still drink. Jiang Cheng approached How Wei Wei and asked if she could take care of this girl. Meanwhile, the boss, looking at him, said that he promised him to drink all this booze. So what is he waiting for now? Or he's already pissed. The guy asked to return to what he promised and finish the rest of the bottles. Jiang Cheng thought that this civilian was testing him too much. He is still restraining himself, and it would be better for this guy not to try his luck. The boy began to approach the next glass and was already bringing it to his lips. He drank many bottles in a row and only managed to put empty glasses on the table. Then the boss looked into his eyes and asked what his name was. He was simply shocked by what was happening. The boy looked into his eyes in response and said that his name was Jiang Cheng. The boss extended his hand to him and asked if he was a soldier. Only soldiers drink this way. He explained to Jiang Cheng that he was from the 8th Military Division. Here you can easily meet a brother in arms, King Hu said as he shook the boy's hand that he had earned his place here. They are brothers in arms. They take care of each other and he asks you to come over anytime. All drinks will be at his expense. The guy asked to call a taxi and go straight home. He will take care of everything. The main thing is that they get home safe and sound. Jiang Cheng agreed and asked to quickly go to the car. The student thanked the teacher for saving them. Meanwhile, the girl who helped him with the drink stood near the fence with her head down. Jiang Cheng wondered if she was okay. Fiona replied that she was fine. The boy asked her to be careful, but she had already stepped on some thorn. The boy exclaimed, looking at the bloody leg, that things were bad. This nail might be rusty, so he will take her to the hospital. The girl asked to just send her home and she would take care of herself. Jiang Cheng said that she needed to see a doctor and it was better to get an appointment or the infection in the wound would spread. He took her in his arms and said that she simply had to get to the reception, and if she didn't want to go, she still couldn't do anything, and he would carry her there directly in his arms. Fiona said that she hated injections and did not want to go to the hospital. She asked to be released and called him an uncouth fool. She does not want to go to the hospital and they asked to let her go. Fiona explained that she was afraid of syringes since childhood and is still afraid of them, so she asks to be released. But the boy asked her to stop whining since they had already arrived. He told her to come into the office immediately. Jiang Cheng threatened to count to 3 if she didn't go inside, he would force her inside. The girl began to close her eyes and cry because she hated injections. Suddenly the boy glanced at the door and began to approach it faster and faster. Then he put his foot forward and pushed this door with his foot as hard as he could. The door immediately opened and he grabbed the girl by the scruff of the neck and began dragging her into the corridor. He asked her to stop acting like a child. Jiang Cheng told the nurse that this girl needed a tetanus shot. She hurt herself on a big rusty nail and she definitely needs it. Fiona began to cry harder and harder and talk about how she was really afraid of syringes. He asked her to calm down because there was nothing to be afraid of. She asked why he grabbed her. Fiona can't move because of him. The boy told the nurse that she could prepare an injection. The girl was already drawing it into the syringe, and now she was ready to give the girl an injection. Fiona began screaming throughout the hospital in pain. It was already night outside and the moon illuminated everything around. Jiang Cheng told Fiona that since it was already late, she should stay with him for the night. He asked not to worry, as he had one more room. The girl replied that there was nothing to be done, and it looked like the keys had disappeared somewhere. She apologized for causing him so much trouble. He showed where the bathroom was. He asked that his wound be cleaned immediately. Jiang Cheng explained that he would leave the first aid kit and go find some clothes to change into. The boy told Fiona that the things would be on the bed and asked if she understood. The girl replied that she understood. Jiang Cheng immediately said goodbye until tomorrow and left. Fiona didn't expect him to be such a gentleman. Guys like that are very rare these days. And then the next day came. The morning was sunny and the sky was blue. The girl slept off and enjoyed the beautiful day. Then she heard something. When she left the room, she noticed her things hanging on the wire. The girl noticed that he even washed her underwear. This is just a shame. She thought that for the first time in her life, a man washed her clothes, even her underwear. Jiang Cheng asked Fiona to wake up and sing, because it was already morning and time for breakfast. When he changed clothes, he asked her to go downstairs. The girl replied that of course she would do so and that she would soon come to the kitchen. Suddenly, a student appeared in front of him, and when she saw Fiona, she asked what she was doing here. She was very surprised and asked her brother to answer. She looked into his eyes and asked him to answer what she was doing here. Jiang Cheng asked her to keep her voice down and explained that she had lost her keys, and it was late at night, and she had also gotten hurt. So he brought her here to stay the night, and nothing happened. The boy apologized to Fiona and explained that it was his sister, Jiang Jianju. Jiang Jianru invited her to come and eat with them. She asked me to sit down at the table and said this very rudely. Jiang Cheng told her not to say such things, after which he apologized and said that she was not yet very comfortable with English. The girl asked if she could eat such food. She said that these were not local dishes and apologized for that, not knowing if such food is suitable for her diet. Fiona replied that it looked great and decided to give it a try. Jiang Jianru told Fiona that although her brother doesn't look like it, he is a very good cook and she should try it. The boy replied that this was nonsense and that he should eat already and stop talking. Since the food is so delicious, why doesn't she eat vegetables? The girl said that this was simply incredible work. Mrs. Fiona is one of the 4 beauties of the school and this needs to be told, but to whom? She just needs some pocket money. Then she decided to tell her dad and grandfather about it and laughed. Fiona thanked her for doing the laundry, blushing a little. Jiang Cheng replied that he just thought that she would have nothing to wear tomorrow, so he washed it for her. The girl was very surprised because the man who does the laundry really exists. Such a rare shot that it is quite mesmerizing. The boy apologized and said that he was not local, so he was used to such things. He asked for forgiveness if he was making her blush because the man washed her things. Fiona replied that everything was fine and that it was even kind of nice. She began to say goodbye to the teacher and said that she had to go to school. She thanked the boy again for everything. Jiang Cheng also waved back and asked her not to rush and be more careful. Meanwhile, a demon called him. The emperor has returned. I asked the demon how he was doing because he was so animated. They decided to meet at a local diner and congratulated him on his return. He explained that everyone was already gathering and he should come too. Jiang Cheng listened to the boy and began to move to where they agreed to meet. He lay in wait for his comrade and very carefully approached him from behind. After that, he hit him with his finger right on the back. This way, I wanted to say hello to him. Jiang Cheng approached this young man and asked him to listen to what he was about to say, otherwise he would say goodbye to his life. Then the guy told him that it was too rude. And did he really decide to kill him? He turned in his direction and said that he had not seen each other for a long time. Jiang Cheng exclaimed that he still had the same vulnerabilities and laughed. The friend replied that at least he was not as late as Sven. He told the emperor that they had not seen each other for a long time. The boy smiled sarcastically and said that compared to him, he still had a lot to learn and called him an amateur. He decided to remove his friend's hand from his own and do it in one deft and bold move. The guy did not expect this and grimaced. Jiang Cheng showed him how to defend himself and made a move for him. A friend exclaimed that he was in pain and asked to do it here. He is still the same child. Jiang Cheng asked him to stop yelling and rather head to the table. He told the boy when they were already sitting at the table that he had heard that he had retired from the special forces. How could he do this? The boy asked him to finally eat and drink and enjoy his food. He asked why he was so cheerful and why such joy. Jiang Cheng explained that his old man left the army, like because he is the only heir in the family and now he needs to find a wife. He ordered him to marry someone from the school and gave him 3 years to do everything. The friend laughed and said that he now had not a life, but a dating simulator. After all, this is a very difficult task and he won't lie about it. He asked Jiang Cheng how his sister was and how he himself was, whether he had acclimatized with his family. Jiang Cheng replied that not yet. He cannot get used to the local order. He has been behind the hill for too long, but this changes a lot and he is slowly learning everything and even teaching at his stepmother's school. The friend laughed and asked if he was really a teacher now. But it's pretty cool and he says it without joking. The boy replied that it was, and that he was a physical education teacher, which was a very good position. Yes, and a lot of free time actually. He asked what he himself would tell if there was anything interesting. The guy replied that it was about the same as his. My father called and told me to take over the family business. If he refuses, he will deprive him of all his money and thinks that it would be easier for him to remain a doctor at the institute. He somehow doesn't really want to talk about it. Everything is complicated. Jiang Cheng asked if he found him a job, would he take it? The friend replied, then of course, and if there is a normal salary, he will find a place to live right away. Jiang Cheng answered the demon that they had a vacancy for a doctor at the school, and he would inform his stepmother. But he should be a qualified specialist in this matter. He asked if he had problems with money. The demon replied that indeed there was and everything was very bad. He needed $180,000 and as soon as possible. Jiang Cheng went to his parents and asked his father if he could help him with something. Then the father replied that you rarely hear such things from him about help. He asked his son to tell him what he needed. The boy began to explain that Sun Wei, his childhood friend, He must know that he is a doctor at the institute. He then thought that they just didn't have enough doctor at the school infirmary and asked for help to help him get a job. He asked his parents what they would say to this. The mother replied that it was very good and asked him to inform him to come to the school and write an application for employment. The boy immediately replied that in this case he would tell him that they agreed. But the father suddenly coughed. He glanced at his son and said that he heard that he was walking with Fiona. He asked when the child would be and exclaimed, "He wants grandchildren." Jang Chung couldn't understand how he knew about this. His sister must have told him, but he didn't think she would rat him out so quickly. Dad has no common sense at all. He can't understand it. The boy asked his father where he heard this and said that there was no need to listen to all sorts of rumors. He just left the army for the reserve a couple of days ago. If only he had time to date a girl. His father asked him to shut up. And he said that there's no point in making excuses here. He knows Sunway's father and they have known each other for a long time. If their family takes Sunway under their wing, they will have to reckon with his father. The boy asked me to tell him then what he wanted and to be closer to the point. The father said that he does not know what kind of relationship he has with Fiona at the moment, but he wants him to marry her in a month. Jang Chung decided that his friend owed more than this 180,000. It will make him pay for the rest of his life. In front of us is the sports field of a physical education class. There were people on the path. The students were very tired and asked how many more laps they should run. Jang Chung replied that he was only in the 5th round and he was still very kind. They thought of resting during physical education. If they don't like something, they will run another 10 laps. One of the students suggested that the rest of the guys leave, otherwise they will die here on the field. Then the teacher crossed his arms over his chest and exclaimed that the little ones had hatched an escape plan. He asked where they decided to go. One of the students replied that he was not going to run. Then the teacher kicked him on the thigh and he fell face down on the ground. The guy was very angry and exclaimed that this was already beating students, but the teacher made him run 5 more laps. The other guy said that teacher Jang Chung is really so cruel. The second one asked him to be quiet, otherwise they wouldn't get into trouble if he heard them. The boy said that since the bell rang for them, he would let them go this time. One of them exclaimed in the back that he was nothing like Mr. Jang, or rather, the monster Jang would be called. The rest of the guys agreed with him. The boy asked his friend how everything went and whether it was normal on the first day of work. The demon adjusted his glasses and said that it was not bad and the food here was very decent. Then he pointed his finger at the class and said that all these cuties made the day even sweeter. Jang Chung exclaimed that it was very good that he liked it. Let him remember what he still owes him now. The demon replied that he knew and would never forget his kindness. The boy said that he didn't even know what sacrifices he had to make. I decided that I needed to visit Fiona because time is money. Jang Chung told his friend that he had to go because he had things to do. The demon asked how he was already leaving because he had not had enough fun yet. The boy answered the demon that when he gets bored, then they will play. Jang Chung, meanwhile, had already arrived at school and was trying to remember where Fiona's office was. It seemed like he was on the 2nd floor. The girl was just going down the steps and he decided that this was probably fate. She saw the boy and asked what he was doing here. Jang Chung began to scratch the back of his head. Looking at her, he said that he wanted to invite her to dinner. That's why I wanted to ask if she was free. Fiona replied that she should be the one thanking him. She asked permission to treat him. Jang Chung couldn't understand how the girl could pay the bill. He asked again if she was free that evening. Fiona replied that she was free. She explained that she had a lesson now and they would see each other in the evening. Jang Chung decided that the girl was quite beautiful. Once they go to dinner, there will be an opportunity to make sure that they are suitable for each other. The boy thought that if they were suitable, they could gradually improve their relationship. Suddenly, someone told him, or rather asked him to come to the director as soon as possible. Jang Chung started knocking on the door, and the director told the boy to come into the office. One of Jang Chung's students showed his father this teacher who beat him. The father asked who gave him the right to do this to his son. The director asked Mr. Jang Chung to explain. She was waiting for an answer from the boy. Then Jang Chung approached this disciple of his and asked if he said that he beat him. Taking him by the scruff of the neck, he asked him to tell them how he disrupted his physical education lessons. But suddenly, the boy's father took him by the hand and asked him to take his hands off his son. He squeezed the teacher's hand in one motion, but he immediately made him a welcome. The man was very surprised and asked what kind of teacher he was and how he dared to behave with his son right in front of him in such an impudent manner. He exclaimed that it would be better for the school to answer for such things and fire this insignificant teacher. Teachers like him are black sheep for prestigious schools like this. The director approached the gentleman and asked him to calm down. She said they would see what they could do. But the man began to shout that they were trying to evade responsibility, and how could one even be such a teacher? Jiang Cheng glanced at this man and decided that this dad was somehow restless. How he hates noisy people like this man. The boy approached him from behind and decided to perform the technique again. He raised his fist, squeezing it as tightly as possible above the head of this restless man. Jiang Cheng approached the table with that fist, and the wooden table broke in half. Jiang Cheng told his father that this was his student, and if he had beaten his students, his son would not be standing here now. The boy began to approach the door and look outside it. The guy who watched from the side thought that this was very cool, and he was Ma Xiaodong, now his fan. Meanwhile, it was already night outside. In a cafe nearby, people were sitting at a table. Jiang Cheng decided that since Fiona was a foreigner, he thought that a Western restaurant would be best. He was heading towards the restaurant in a beautiful suit, waiting for his companion. A couple came out of this cafe. The guy was talking to his girlfriend or friend, and suddenly she slipped. The girl began to fall, and Jiang Cheng appeared in her path, who immediately caught her. Then the girl turned in his direction and asked what was wrong with him and what he was thinking. She approached her boyfriend and asked him to just look at him. He told her not to be angry and not to waste time on people like him. Jiang Cheng decided that it was better to forget about them and not start a showdown right on the road. If they start barking now, you obviously won't be able to get rid of them for a long time. The boy had already entered the restaurant. He glanced at the couple and thought that they too had decided to have dinner here. And then Fiona appeared in front of him. She changed for making him wait. And I started ordering a well-done steak with vanilla sauce. And the guy ordered the same thing, only with ketchup. Fiona asked if he liked ketchup. Jiang Cheng asked if she thought his skin color would look better if he ate it with black pepper sauce. The girl replied that now that he said about it, she thinks that this will suit him quite well. Fiona accidentally knocked over a glass of wine with her elbow. The glass flew straight to the floor and broke with a clang, spilling wine all around. The guy from the next table immediately glanced in their direction, turning towards this ringing. He was tired from the table and slowly began to approach them. The guy waved his hand to Fiona and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He asked how she was doing. The boy was very surprised and asked if she knew him. The guy glanced at him and said that he was Robert, Fiona's ex. Jiang Cheng said in response that he doesn't really like to learn about people worth paying attention to. Robert suggested that we talk about Fiona in this case. Without makeup, she is terrible and very stupid. Didn't she just break the glass? Jiang Cheng asked Robert if he liked it. If he liked someone, he would like him despite all the shortcomings. The boy clenched his teeth and exclaimed that he had better shut up and learn some manners, at least a little. Robert got angry too and asked who he was. He said that he did not belong here. Jiang Cheng gave him an evil, contemptuous look and broke the table in half with one blow of his fist. Fiona watched what was happening and thought about what would happen next. Robert did not expect this and looked at his opponent in surprise. Jiang Cheng apologized because he got a little angry and couldn't hold back. He explained that if this blow had hit a person, he would now be dead or dying. The boy took the girl by the hand and dragged her out of this restaurant towards the exit. And they were already on the street and walking hand in hand along a beautiful alley. Jiang Cheng asked the girl what she saw in this idiot. Fiona asked in response, holding back tears, "Did she really look like a fool that time in the restaurant?" Jiang Cheng replied that, of course not. She knew that he was a scoundrel, and why be sad about him now? But he didn't think that her ex could be such a freak. The boy asked if he looked like an idiot. Fiona asked what he was even saying. Jiang Cheng added that idiots are ugly, but he is so handsome. The boy laughed and asked the girl how she could cry when such a handsome man was next to her. Fiona looked him in the eye and called him a narcissist. They began to walk further along the street. Jiang Cheng told the girl that she is much more beautiful when she smiles. He asked to go with him and promised to take her home. The guys were already approaching the house and said goodbye to each other. And then the next day came. Jiang Cheng thought that the office that his stepmother provided him was very good. At least he doesn't have to share it with this gold digger. The boy thought that one of the 4 goddesses of Tian'ai, Hu Jingwen, was in this teacher's room. Yes, he likes her and they have a lot in common. For example, they think that students are too relaxed now. Jiang Cheng turned his head towards the teacher and asked if the students were annoying. The girl responded by saying hello, that they were listening with half an ear as usual. She just burned a couple while trying to play online. I sent them to run a couple of laps on the sports ground, although I don't think it will help. Jiang Cheng replied, "They are still those little bastards and only think about toys." The teacher told the boy that it was his turn to do the routine test in the evening. Then the boy asked if she was talking about being on duty. He asked what they usually do there. The teacher explained that they were checking the dormitory to make sure that the children did not smoke, drink, gamble, etc. She asked him to be here at 10 o'clock in the evening. Boys are generally wild and he should be more careful. They are quite cruel in their pranks. Jiang Cheng asked how dare they play pranks on the teachers. She heard that someone used a bucket of water, someone used superglue, and one person could not have planned it in such a way that even threatening them with expulsion would not solve the problem. Jiang Cheng replied that since they don't care about the threat of expulsion, then these bastards need to be taught a lesson so that they begin to obey. The boy slowly walked towards the dormitory and began to climb the steps to the main door. After that, he was already approaching the 5th floor and thought that they were behaving quite well. But suddenly, something flew in his direction and loud laughter was heard outside the doors. Jiang Cheng changed his mind and decided that these bastards had too much energy for the evening time. In front of him was door number 510. There was a no entry sign hanging above it. The boy began to approach this door and grabbed the handle with his hand. He paused when he heard something not far from him. It was some strange sound. A basin of water flew to the floor, rapidly falling down. Jiang Cheng dodged in time, and the water did not fall on him, and the basin fell upside down on the floor. There were guys next to him who asked if he had dodged their trick. The boy called the punks well done and asked who dared to make fun of him. But they did not answer the question, and the leader of the guys gave the command to the others to throw at him. The guys began to throw some balls towards the boy. Jiang Cheng managed to catch one of them with a deft movement. He only had time to dodge, and one of the inflatable water balloons ended up in his hand again. The boy asked if they thought they could play with him, and I thought it was too naive. The guy who started it all asked what it was just now and whether he was even human. Jiang Cheng shouted back that they were too weak and it looked like he should teach them a lesson in manners. He gave the command to the guys to all gather immediately. Since they are full of energy, he asked them to play something else. 500 squats need to be done right now. The first one to finish will go to bed. The guys were shocked by so many push-ups and fell to the floor. Some of them had already fallen and could not from fatigue. When they finished doing push-ups, their leader told the guys to all go to their bunks. Jiang Cheng glanced at one of the boys and asked to wait. He asked what was wrong with his face. The guy with glasses grabbed his cheek with his hand and lowered his head down and answered that it was nothing. Jiang Cheng thought that it looked like someone had screwed him over. He doesn't want to say right away that he will find out on his own. The boy told the guys that he would be on duty all week, so they better behave. And now, he gave the command to everyone to go to bed. If they are late for class tomorrow, he won't let them get away with it so easily. The next morning, the teacher asked Jiang Cheng how his night went. She asked if these kids were all sneaky. The boy, holding his chin with his hand, replied that this was certainly true. But only a few people and they won't be able to carry it out. The girl said that this was not bad and that he really seemed capable of dealing with these kids. They bullied a lot of teachers and they're just some bunch of little monsters. Jiang Cheng asked if he could ask a question. If a student is being bullied, will he tell his teachers? The girl replied that, of course not. If a student tries to use the teacher's help, he will definitely be beaten even more severely. A whole week has already passed. Night fell again, the lights in the hostel were on full blast. One of the guys told Mr. Zhang that today was his last day of duty, and he must be very tired. Jiang Cheng replied that if he already knows that he is tired, then he advises them to quickly go to bed. Although this is the last day of duty, let them not think that he will not be able to cope with them because of this. He called these guys small fry. The guy was holding some kind of medicine in his hands and said that if this is the case, then it is necessary to provide a parting gift to Mr. Zhang. They unanimously put bottles with some substance forward, stretching out their arms. They began to press the dispenser, and an incomprehensible product began to fly out of these bottles. The guys lined up next to each other and began to press on the bottles, splashing out the liquid. Jiang Cheng dodged and jumped over the guys' heads. He just dodged these guys very cleverly and skillfully. The boy put his hands forward and with a lightning movement snatched the bottle from one of the students. He took this bottle and approached the guy with it. Jiang Cheng pressed it, splashing liquid. The guys began to scream, shocked by this turn of events. One of them exclaimed to Mr. Zhang that this was very rude. The boy suddenly smelled blood. He couldn't understand why he suddenly smelled blood. Several guys carried the boy with glasses out in their arms and told Mr. Jung that the student was trying to commit suicide. Then the boy ran up to the boy with lightning speed and asked him to carry him here. He picked up this guy, noticing that he had cut his wrists. Jung Chung brought the guy to the infirmary. He called Dr. Sun Wei. The guy explained that he had a student here with cut veins and needed his immediate help. They laid the boy on a hospital bed. Sun Wei said that everything was fine and asked them to stay outside for now. Jung Chung walked out the door and, pressing the students against the wall, asked them to tell them what the hell was going on here. The guys were covered in streams of sweat, and each looked down without even looking into the teacher's eyes. Then the boy asked if they were deaf or did not understand what he said. He asked to listen more carefully now. He decided to give them one last chance. One of the guys told Mr. Teacher that they were really sorry. They didn't think this would happen and it was just a joke. Jung Chung thought to himself that if this was a joke, then the bespectacled man would not have cut his wrists. The student answered the teacher that they really didn't want anything serious and especially didn't think that it could end like this. Jung Chung told the three of them to lower themselves into a half-squat position and remain in the equestrian position until he said all clear. The lights were on, Oz in the hospital, and a doctor was saving a guy with glasses. An hour and a half passed. Sun Wei opened the door and told Jung Chung that he was fine now and would wake up soon. The guy asked why he didn't send him to the hospital, given his critical condition. Jung Chung replied that the hospital was too far away and his skills were much higher. Sun Wei said that he knew him well, and such an operation is a mere trifle for such an experienced surgeon like him. The boy replied that it was so and said that he would go and see him. He asked me to look after these three assholes for now, and glancing at the guys who were standing in a half squat, he gave the command to them to continue standing. Jung Chung began to enter the room where a boy in glasses with bandaged hands lay. He began to come to his senses and slowly opened his eyes and looked ahead. The boy asked if there could be an infirmary in heaven. Jung Chung asked him what heaven he was talking about. There is no place in heaven for slobs like him. The boy recognized Mr. Jang in front of him. He asked if he saved him and why. He should have been left to die. The boy got angry and asked if he thought that death was the solution to everything. Only a coward would commit suicide. If he wants to die so badly, then let him die. He might take off the bandage and die with such a mattress. Jung Chung approached the boy and asked him to tell everything that happened to him. The boy replied that he was bullied every day and he could no longer tolerate it. They are allowed everything because they are from rich families. Then the boy asked what kind of rag he was and said that because of this he decided to commit suicide. Did he think about what it would be like for his parents? If he died, he would only become a laughingstock for others. If he doesn't want to be bullied, he needs to become stronger. Then no one will dare to touch him. He advised him to think seriously about it. When the boy walked out the door, he asked the doctor if they had behaved well. The doctor replied that of course it's good. Even my knees are still shaking. The boys told the teacher that they realized who had done very badly and that it would never happen again. Jung Chung asked if their conscience had returned and why they didn't think about it when they bullied others. He said that they would go to bed only after they had stood like this for another 3 hours and began to note the time. Sun Wei advised the guys to behave well and hold on. If they cause trouble again, Jung Chung has a whole bunch of punishments in store for them. And then an hour passed. One of the guys told the boy that they were really sorry and asked him to let them go. But Jung Chung replied that it was 3 hours and not a minute less. Another 2 hours passed. The guys stood there in a half squat. And when the 3 hours ended, the boy said that the time was up and they could rest. The guys immediately fell to the floor, half dead, and could not even get up because their knees were shaking and their legs hurt. Jung Chung told them that he hoped this would not happen again. Next time they won't get by with standing in a half squat for 3 hours. The teacher said that she heard that he encountered a suicide attempt while on duty yesterday. The boy replied that it was so, and what they did from above. The girl explained that in the morning they decided to seriously punish the 3 guilty students, and they offered their deepest apologies to the victim. But it just so happened that they were nothing at all. That they couldn't even get out of their beds. Looks like someone already punished them yesterday. Jung Chung replied that it was true because they had been behaving badly lately. They are raised like little kings at home. But outside the walls of their home there is a different society and no one will indulge them here. While they were talking, a boy with glasses and bandaged hands walked out the door and called Mr. Zhang. In the infirmary, lights were on all along the corridor and in different rooms where patients were lying. Jung Chung asked the boy what happened. The boy fell to his knees in front of him. The boy asked what he was doing. The teacher smiled at him and asked him to get up from his knees and talk calmly. She turned to the boy and asked what he did to him yesterday and why he was behaving so unusually. The boy, without getting up from his knees, began to ask Mr. Jung Chung to take him as a student. He did not let up and exclaimed that he really wanted to learn everything from him. The boy spread his arms to the side and told the boy that a man's bow was worth a lot. He cannot accept such a gift. Jung Chung asked him to get up from his knees and talk normally. The boy answered the teacher that he would not get up from his knees if he did not take him as a student. Jung Chung apologized to Miss Universe. I asked why it was laughing. There's actually a guy here. The boy asked the girl to control herself. The teacher apologized for the fact that she could not restrain herself. She thought that they both looked very funny, like a scene from a drama about knights. Their game is quite funny. Jiang Chung asked the boy if he wanted to be his student. He explained that he doesn't take just anyone. Since he wants to learn from him, there will be conditions and tests for him. The boy was delighted and asked if he was taking him as a student after all. When the boy asked him to finally get up from his knees and talk to him normally, he asked the boy to introduce himself first. Wang Wenlong immediately stood up and clenched his fists with a smile. Jiang Chung asked why he wanted to be his student and why such a rush. The boy explained that he wanted to become stronger. Then he will be able to kick the butt of all those who mocked him. The teacher asked for forgiveness and said that this was somehow too much. Mr. Jiang is not the best goal, doesn't he find it? Jiang Chung asked if he really wanted to study with him for revenge. He is filled with anger. Somehow he's not sure that he will listen to him at all. He must know that if everyone thought the same way he does now, the whole world would be mired in chaos. There are people who train every day, no matter the cost, just to keep themselves in shape. The boy asked who he thought they were. These are soldiers, and they are always ready to give their best for their country, so they train daily to be strong. Being a soldier is very prestigious and a great honor. If everyone trained for revenge, then nowhere would be safe. Does he think that such a thing would preserve order in the world? Of course not, and only the egoists would remain. But what does he think about those guys who bullied him? Wang Wenlong replied, "They are trash and a disgrace to society." Then the boy said that if he was the same as them, then let him go and take revenge on them. But he's not like that at all, and why waste time on such scum? He is confused and drowning in a swamp of other people's opinions and criticism. He forgot about those who really care about him. Doesn't it seem to him that living such a life is extremely exhausting? The boy replied to Mr. Zhang that now he understood everything. He will not care about anyone's opinion, he will remain his own. First of all, he should think about his family. It would be a shame for him to die like this. He wants to become stronger, but not for revenge, but for himself. Jiang Chung explained to the boy that he would have to pass a test before he would accept him as a student. The test will be running 20 laps and doing 20 push-ups every morning. Wang Wenlong thanked the teacher and asked him to accept his bow. The teacher told the boy that he could go. The girl said that she had already come to the end of the ceremony of taking this boy as a student and smiled a little. Jiang Chung asked why she was also looking at him or also wanted to learn from him. The boy explained that his temple was too small for such a beauty. "What's going on?" She immediately lowered her gaze and blushed a little. Jiang Chung raised his eyes to her and asked if she was blushing. So it looks like he's right. The teacher exclaimed that this could not be, and her face would never turn red. Apparently, he has some abilities. It is quite difficult to convince a simpleton student like him, but he succeeded in no time. He replied that he could easily handle 3 students like Wang Wenlong because he was so charming. The girl said that she had never met anyone more narcissistic than him. He used to be in the army, is that why they train him this way? She was once a big fan of military guys. The boy answered the girl that she was smart, and he really was a signalman. This was the supporting cast. That's what the teacher said. Jiang Chung did not expect this and said that the signalmen are not some kind of storekeepers. He worked with high-tech stuff like signal interception, hacking and all that. The girl held her head and said that she didn't know about it. She asked what kind of missions he took part in. Jian Chung explained that he was a member of the Special Forces and was involved in dangerous missions. They went deep into the forest to raid drug dealers and entered enemy territory to capture their leaders. If it weren't for his grandfather. The teacher looked at him and said that she didn't know he was such an amazing soldier. I asked if he was busy tomorrow evening. If not, I should like to treat him to dinner. The girl asked what he thought about it. Jiang Chung answered honestly that he couldn't. The teacher was very surprised by this answer. Then the boy laughed in response. He asked, like a 21st century gentleman, he couldn't let a beauty like her treat him to dinner. He asked if she was free this weekend and said that he had dinner. Jongchung asked the girl to tell him the answer. He has a weak heart and he is afraid it won't stand it. Especially will not stand refusal. The teacher replied that he had just refused her and she was still recovering from the trauma. How is he going to make amends? Jongchung said that he thought that as a man, he could not allow her to spend money. He should do this. He did not refuse her, but simply invited her himself. The girl replied that pretending to be cool like that would not work with her. She won't buy it. What a cliche. The boy did not expect such an answer and froze a little in place. But the teacher unexpectedly smiled and said that since he was so sincere, they would see each other at 5 on Sunday. She usually doesn't agree to an invitation so easily. Since they are colleagues, she will give him a chance. Jongchung said that in this case, he would take her wherever he wanted and feed her whatever he wanted. And of course, he will pay for everything, but he wants her to promise something. The girl asked, "What exactly?" If it's something sane, then maybe she won't mind. Jongchung asked to wear a pair of black stockings on this day. He explained that he really hoped to see what she would look like in black stockings. He asked not to disappoint him. And then the next bright sunny day arrived. Jongchung walked down the corridor. The boy saw a girl in the corridor. He pushed her away from him with his hand. Jongchung pushed her away and she fell straight to the floor. She asked who was there in front of her. Then she asked what was wrong with him and asked him not to stand like a pillar. Shouldn't he help her after knocking her down? Jongchung asked what kind of form this was. Is this really a clown from a play? The boy explained that she was making her look fat. The girl asked what other clown was and explained that it was the Queen of Hearts. Jongchung began to help lift her from the floor and said that it looked more like a suit from a bachelor party. The girl asked what he knew and asked him to help her get up right away. The boy asked how she could wear something like that. She should stick to the rules and not put such nonsense on herself. This is the teacher's room, and there is no need to rush around here. He asked to change into a normal school uniform. Then the girl asked him who he thought she was because she was not his student, and he had no right to lecture her. Jongchung asked her not to run around here looking so strange. Does she really think it's okay to talk like that after bumping into someone? When the girl looked into his eyes and asked, how dare he scold her? The boy asked why he couldn't scold her. She thought he was an idiot. He really mistook her for a student. She is the #1 beauty among the 4 goddesses, Tian Ai Tiao Mayer. How can he not know her? She decided to play with him a little to let off some steam. The girl asked the boy if he could help her get back. She explained that she sprained her ankle because she was in a lot of pain. She apologized to the gentleman and said that it was her fault and would no longer dress like that. Jongchung thought about how this fall wasn't even serious and how she could have injured her leg. The girl realized that he did not save up for this, but she decided to make him believe. Then she suddenly began to cry and told the master that her leg hurt very much, and the boy thought that perhaps she really was hurt and approached her to look. Jongchung said that she gave him her right leg, or she hurt her too. Then the girl said that her left leg hurt, and then again that it's still right. The boy noticed that she was trying to play with him and decided to see what would happen next. Jongchung asked the girl to lean against the wall and stretch out her leg so that he could straighten it. She said he had better take her to the school doctor so they could take care of her. But the boy said that everything was fine. It's not difficult and he can handle it himself. The girl asked to stop touching her. Her foot was very ticklish and she asked to stop. Jongchung exclaimed that she twisted her ankle by crashing into him. He just helps her and she can scream as much as she wants. It's all useless. Mayer said, looking into his eyes, that he should have taken her to the first aid station. But in the end, he tried to set the leg himself and called him a huge hooligan. The girl began to approach the boy, extending her hands straight to him. Jongchung no longer knew how to get rid of her and placed a block in front of himself. He also put his hands forward and she began to approach faster and faster. When the girl approached, his hands were right on her chest. It was awkward for both of them. Mayer blushed and turned away from him with her head down. The boy also blushed and, raising his hands up, thought that they were very soft. Mayer was shocked and froze in place, not knowing how to come to her senses. She again called the teacher a petty bully. The girl got really angry after that. Mayer asked how a bully like him could become a teacher. Then the boy asked her to look back. If she had crashed into the glass, she would have been cut by the shards. The girl immediately looked where he pointed. Jongchung began to explain that he wanted to help, but he was treated like a bully. He called her heartless. Mayer immediately thanked him for this. Jiang Chung said that this time she really twisted her ankle and asked if he was telling the truth. Mei lowered her head and blushed, and replied that it was indeed true. She asked if he knew from the very beginning that she was not a student. Jiang Chung replied that of course he knew and called her by name. The boy thought that, as a soldier from the Special Forces, he had a photographic memory. He looked and memorized the personal files of all female teachers. Mei got angry and called him a vile scoundrel. He knew that she was not a student and still deceived her. She thought to herself that this was not part of her plans, and he turned everything against her. Jiang Chung asked if she had sprained her ankle and asked her to be a good girl. He promised to take her to the first aid station. The girl replied that she would get there herself and did not need the help of such a scoundrel like him. But the boy said that they would go together and took her in his arms. He said that this time it is not up to her to decide, otherwise the queen will become a cripple. One of the guys behind him asked if they had seen it. Something seems to be happening in the conference room. Just a bunch of hooligans and who knows what they're up to. Jiang Chung asked how they managed to get inside and what the guards at the gate were doing. Mei replied that the guards simply earn their living here. They won't dare stop them. The boy asked Dr. Sun Wei to look at her ankle. She seems to have dislocated it. The doctor replied that this was such a ridiculous injury. He could have sent it himself and why he came to him. Jiang Chung replied that he didn't care, but she didn't trust him because he didn't have a doctor's license. Since he is a doctor, he is more reliable. The boy said that he was leaving it to him and would go check the conference room. As Jiang Chung walked along the corridor, he thought that this was his stepmother's school, and that meant that this was his school too. How dare they do this? When he opened the next door, he asked the guys to stop immediately. One of them turned to him and asked who he was and who let him in here. He asked him to get out of here before he got angry. Jiang Chung, on the contrary, approached the guys and asked who they were. He exclaimed that this was no place for people like them. Their leader replied that he was trying to save him from unnecessary problems, and that he imagines himself to be Superman. Or he wears underpants over his clothes. Jiang Chung thought while looking at these scoundrels that they beat that teacher, but how is he related to these scum? The man asked him to better mind his own business. He wanted the boy to disappear now, and maybe he would spare his leg. Then the boy exclaimed, approaching them, that the scoundrels seemed tired of living. He began to approach faster and faster, not at all afraid of this gang. The leader gave the command to his lads to kill him, and they began to approach the enemy with their fists. Jiang Chung stood rooted to the spot without fear of these scoundrels and expected an attack from them. He clenched his fist and with a deft movement of his hand, neutralized one of the bandits. After that, he hit two more people directly in the face with both fists. The bandits began to fall to the floor, turning over and screaming. The leader was very angry and, gritting his teeth, looked towards this insolent enemy. The gang leader grabbed the first wooden chair he came across with both hands. He crept up to the boy and lifted this chair over his head as high as possible. But before he could hit Jiang Chung on the head, the boy was first above his head and broke the chair. The boy came closer to them and asked how these guys got into the gang in the first place. They are too weak to survive in it. He picked up the phone and thought that it looked like he should ask someone to take care of them. He called and inquired whether the head of the department was tired of his position and wanted someone to replace him. Jiang Chung explained that hooligans had sneaked into the school and asked where the education department was looking. The man replied that how could this even happen and that he would send someone right away. Jiang Chung explained that he knocked them out and they were in the conference room. The boy asked me to come and clean up here. He thought to himself that his father's name really did work wonders. But what did these bandits forget here, and what does the teacher have to do with this? It looks like everything is much more complicated than it seems. Well, let the education department deal with this, but he needs to go. And now, several days have passed. Jiang Chung thought that there are no classes today, and he can relax a little at home. He was holding his phone in his hands, and suddenly the phone rang in his hands. The boy thought that this hot thing seemed to want to ask him out on a date. But before he could answer the call, the girl asked him to quickly save her. Jiang Chung asked her to calm down and said that he was on his way. The boy thought that this was the same situation as with the incident in the bar. The girl shouted to quickly come to school and help her. One of the guys asked how this girl dared to call somewhere and asked to give the phone here to break it. The boy thought that something really serious must have happened at school. He ran as quickly as possible, but there was a thick chain with a large lock hanging on the gate. He approached the gate and noticed that the school gate was closed. What's going on there? All that remains is to climb over the wall. There are so many students and teachers inside. If something happens, the consequences will be unimaginable. Jiang Chung found himself inside and wondered what was going on and where all the students had gone. He began to search the building, but there was really no one there, and no one was even sticking his head out. A huge high-rise building rose to the very sky. The boy glanced at her. He thought that it looked like they were all being held hostage in the same place. Where can you keep so many people? He began to look at the school from the outside and decided to quickly head to the gym. Why would anyone put security there? There wasn't a single person nearby who looked like a security guard. The boy began to approach the gym and looked out from behind the wall. He decided it looked like it was here. There were two guys with machine guns near the gym. Jiang Chung was surprised that they were carrying weapons and tried to figure out who they were. He decided to climb to the second floor to take a look and began to climb the pipe. He climbed up the pipe to the second floor and jumped inside. The boy noticed that no one was guarding here and hid a little. Jiang Chung began to peer through the crack. He heard some sounds not far from him. There were probably people there. Indeed, the entire room was guarded by armed people and there were hostages there. The boy began to take a closer look and asked what the hell they were up to here. In front of us was a huge school gym. One of the men called the other on the radio. I asked him to carefully monitor the street and not allow even a fly to fly inside. He also said to stop hoping the cops will save them. His people are standing around and they won't let them through. The man said, addressing the hostages, that he knew that they were all children of rich parents, and they asked them to just do what he says and none of them will get hurt. Their requirements are simple. They should call their parents now and tell them to prepare 1 million yuan. They will lose a finger if there is even one less day. The guys silently listened to the man, looking at him in fear. Jiang Chung thought that the problem was that these thugs might kill the hostages after they got the money. He decided that he needed to quickly come up with something and glanced at the basket of balls. These balls near which he passed, the boy heard some noise there. The balls spilled out of the basket and flew throughout the room, scattering in different directions. One of the men turned to his boys and asked them to immediately check the floor above. The guys immediately began to climb the steps. The armed men ran up as quickly as possible. They were at the top with lightning speed, and the boy was already hiding in the doorway under the ceiling. His look changed, and he started laughing like a demon. Jiang Chung was ready for anything. And then a few minutes passed. The man began calling on the radio again. He asked what was happening on the second floor. The man asked to answer to confirm. He told the others that something was going on up there, and he gave the command to stop guarding the door and check there. He also directed the rest of the guys to go with them. The armed men began to climb the steps. They were already approaching the boy. There were a lot of balls from a large basket lying around. Jiang Chung rushed forward like lightning. The armed guys saw him. They were surprised by his speed. The boy flew up to the guys and disarmed two of them. He punched another one in the face with all his might and he flew back. Then the next one went to waste. With a deft movement of his elbow, the boy hit him on the nose. Another enemy was neutralized and the boy pressed his face to the floor. All these people were wearing masks and were very surprised by what was happening. They could not understand who it was that was coping with armed people alone. Jiang Chung continued to swing his fists, scattering all the armed guys. One of them managed to pull out a weapon and pointed the gun directly at the boy. Jiang Chung again, with a deft movement of his foot, neutralized the enemy, knocking the weapon out of his hands. After that, he punched him in the face and sent him flying with his elbow. The gun ended up on the floor. The boy did a good job knocking it out of the enemy's hands. He began to pick up this weapon from the floor, and now at least he had some kind of protection. The boy thought that there were only two left below. It was time to start the attack. Jiang Chung began to climb the steps, scattering everyone in his path. He continued to fight his opponents and began to approach another of them. The boy put the weapon in front of him and started shooting as quickly as possible. Bullets began to fly out of the gun. The masked man was writhing in pain. He squirmed and screamed every now and then as blow after blow caught up with him. He contorted his face into a terrible grimace and began to fall to the floor screaming. Jiang Chung jumped as high as possible and neutralized several more people and fell to his knee. He landed on one knee and pointed the gun at another guy. But their leader had already seen him and took aim. The boy did not notice him, but felt him and quickly dodged to the side. His shoulder was slightly grazed by the bullet, but the wound was not that serious. He managed to shoot at the gang leader and he began to fall on his back. The students watched what was happening and asked if this was really their physical education teacher. One of the students said that it was very cool. From now on, he is her hubby and they don't even dare touch him. The girl began to approach Jiang Chung. She asked if he was injured. The boy closed his eyes and replied that he was fine, just a graze from a bullet. She said he was hit and should go to the hospital immediately. Jong Chung said that he would do so after the police arrived. The teacher said they had already called the police. They will be here soon, and she asked not to worry. She told Jong Chung that he was an adult, so he should talk less and go to the hospital quickly. She explained that the wound was from a bullet and he needed to go to the hospital right away. She agreed to go with him. The boy did not resist and went forward along the corridor. They decided not to hesitate, but rather to go to the hospital. Police cars were parked on the street. The teacher asked if he saw that the police were already here, so he can go with her to the hospital. And now, they were already climbing to the second floor. The girl said he was bleeding a lot and must be in a lot of pain. Jeong Chung replied that it was just an abrasion. He received more serious injuries in the unit. The boy asked her not to worry and said that he was fine. The teacher noticed that he was so cool today. He must have been great in his unit. The boy replied that of course it was and looked somewhere ahead. Suddenly his phone rang in his pocket and he reached into it with his hand. He took out his phone and looked at it. His father called him and he immediately picked up the phone. Jeong Chung asked his father why such a busy person was suddenly calling him. He asked how he could help. The father replied that he heard that he was wounded. Then the boy replied that he should know that his son was good-looking. A small abrasion from a bullet will not harm him. My father asked if he had bragged to him about how tough he was in the unit. And yet he was wounded by second-rate thugs and called him a weakling. The boy replied that it was all because he was trying to protect his future bride. The father was immediately happy when he heard about his daughter-in-law and asked if she was okay. If anything happens to her, it will be his fault. The father was clearly worried about his son. Then he said that in any case, this was his grandfather's mission. The future of their Jeong family is in his hands. The father asked his son to go about his business and get his bride. The son answered him that he would do so and asked him to better go to work. He knows what to do. When the boy passed out, he immediately closed his eyes and exhaled heavily. The teacher asked why his father mentioned 4 daughters-in-law and what he was talking about. The boy exclaimed that she had misheard. What other 4 daughters-in-law? The girl asked not to try to fool her. Did he really have his eye on those 4 beauties? Well, he has an appetite. The boy decided that she understood everything. It would be very awkward if she found out she was one of them. The teacher laughed and said that she was just joking. She asked him to see how scared he was. He is in good shape, but if he is served by 4 beauties, he will not be able to withstand it for a long time. The girl calmed down and said that she would not tease him and asked him to take him home. The boy smiled and replied that he was afraid it would be a burden to her. The teacher said that they were colleagues and there was no need to stand on ceremony. She took his arm and they headed towards the hospital exit. And now, several days have passed. It was sunny and clear outside. Jeong Chung thought that his mother was worried about his injury and wanted him to rest for a few days. But this small wound has already healed, and he was already exhausted at home from boredom. The boy's phone vibrated again. Jingwen called him. I asked him how he was feeling there, whether he was feeling better already, and they asked if he woke up. The boy explained that he was used to getting up early in the army and did not like to sleep for a long time. Besides, it's already noon. Jingwen asked Jeong Chung whether his pot was brewing properly, and he didn't forget anything. Then the boy began to remember, but nothing came to mind. The girl asked what was wrong with him. He said he would take care of her, or he was afraid that she would eat too much and is now afraid to come. Jeong Chung realized that he really forgot about it. He asked where she was now. Jingwen replied that she was near the school gate. The boy asked her to wait for him there and said that he would be there in a minute. He got dressed very quickly and began to approach the school gates. He thought about how lousy he felt for keeping her waiting. Jingwen was already waiting for him outside the school, looking ahead. Jeong Chung walked up to the girl as quickly as possible and waved to her. She noticed that he came and was happy about it. She stood outside the school gates waiting in all her glory. The boy looked at her and said that she had very beautiful stockings. She asked what he was looking at, and she asked me to stop staring with my perverted eyes. She explained that she rarely wears black stockings. If not for his strange request, she would not have put them on. Jeong Chung laughed in response and said that she put them on after all. Jingwen asked the boy how he could forget that he invited her to dinner. No sincerity, or he is afraid that she will empty his wallet. Jeong Chung replied that her words upset him. He asked where she would like to eat and said that he would take care of it. The girl asked how his wound was and if everything was okay. The boy replied that it had healed a long time ago and with his body it was just a trifle. He asked where she wanted to go and what cuisine she preferred, Western or Eastern. Jingwen replied that it was neither. She wants to eat spicy Malatan. Jiangcheng thought that she was talking about emptying his wallet, but she only ordered spicy soup. The girl said that she knew a good place nearby and asked to follow her. They headed towards a restaurant called Malatan. Jingwen said, looking at the boy, that she ordered another one and he should try it. The boy replied that of course he would try and directed the food to his mouth. The girl began to try this dish and shed tears. She exclaimed that it was really sharp. Jiangcheng noticed that she seemed to prefer bright flavors. Then she replied that the spicier the Malatan, the better and much tastier. Jiangcheng asked why she stuttered and asked if she really couldn't speak normally. Jingwen explained that it was her fault and that it was really too harsh. Meanwhile, a man began to approach them. He walked straight up to the table and asked the girl how about having a drink with him. She turned to him and exclaimed that she didn't even know him and there was no point in it. Then the man leaned towards the table and said that it was very rude to refuse him. One of the guys at another table started shouting that she had better agree. The second said that their boss was so kind as to invite her personally. The man again said that this did not depend on his girlfriend at all and asked her to follow him. The man continued to become impudent and asked her not to be shy but to go with him. He came up behind her and again began to call her to him. Jingwen said again that she didn't want to. Then her friend immediately grabbed this impudent man by the hand and asked if they were blind, or they don't see that it's right here in front of them. The man asked the dude to know his place. He said that they would take her with them, but the boy stood up from his seat and clenching his fist, asked him not to even dream about his girlfriend and called him trash. He approached his opponent and threw him back with a lightning strike. He hit him so hard that he flew into the next table and fell on his back. The rest of the guys began to approach them and one of them asked if he wanted to fight. Jiangcheng exclaimed that their lust is a disease and they will have to fix it. The boy approached one of the opponents and hit him with his fist with all his might. He said that he would do it for them for free. And even if they don't dare do it again. Jiangcheng scattered all the guys and asked them to get out of here immediately and now. They rose from the floor screaming and ran towards the exit, after which the boy returned back to the table. He told the girl that he had already figured everything out and asked if she was glad that he protected her. Jingwen lowered her head and closed her eyes and called it narcissism. Then the boy invited her to continue. They shouldn't let those couple of thugs ruin their mood. He asked if she was scared. Jingwen replied that of course not, she was not afraid of them. After all, she has him next to her. Jiangcheng exclaimed as he looked at the girl that he thought she was scared. She asked not to parody her. Then the boy said that she really talks so funny. After which he laughed and promised not to do that again. Jingwen raised her glass of water to wash down this very spicy dish. After which she got angry and asked how dare he laugh at her. Yes, and right in her face. The boy smiled and said that he noticed that she had stopped stuttering. After his words, she took his ear with her hand and pulled it up. She explained that her tongue was simply numb. Does he really think that she can't deal with him? Jiangcheng asked to have mercy on him and apologized to her. She said that she would forgive him, but first she had to teach him a little lesson. The boy smiled in response and completely agreed with her. She suggested doing something interesting. Jiangcheng spread his hands to the side and asked what she meant by interesting. Then Jingwen grimaced and asked what he was thinking about. She wanted to suggest going to an amusement park. The boy smiled and replied that he thought it would be something more interesting. Jingwen asked if he was going or not. The boy replied that of course he was coming and it was an honor for him. They got up from the table and headed towards the exit of the restaurant. Jiangcheng asked why she was walking so far from him. He won't eat her if he comes closer and gently takes her by the hand. The girl was a little embarrassed and asked to let me go because it looked strange. Jiangcheng explained to the girl that since he invited her, she shouldn't be embarrassed by him today. Jingwen exclaimed with her eyes closed that she did not agree to this. She asked if this was his way of confessing his feelings, but he took her hand and pulled her towards the amusement park that was right in front of them. The guys were already approaching a huge amusement park. The boy asked where she wanted to go. Jingwen replied that she was looking for something more exciting. Now she pulled him towards the slides. They headed towards the roller coaster. They had been traveling along these long, dangerous hills for a long time. Jiangcheng thought that compared to the guns and fire that he experienced himself, it was too weak, not at all breathtaking. After the roller coaster ride, they rode the water transport. The boy said that they visited all the scary attractions. Why are her legs shaking? The girl replied that no, and she was not such a coward. Jiang Chung said that she is a brave beauty. Jiang Chung told Jingwen that it was already evening and he would see her off. The girl replied that she lived nearby, so they were on the same route. She said that today was a very relaxing day. Jiang Chung agreed and said that it was a good way to unwind after a work week. This is his tip. He usually charges per day as a personal bodyguard. Then Jingwen asked which bodyguards were letting their hands go. Looks more like a pervert. Jiang Chung, spreading his arms to the sides, said that even if he is not a bodyguard and is still a pervert, then in order to protect her, he can still get the money after all. Of course, he said all this as a joke. Jingwen laughed and replied that it made sense. She asked how he wanted to receive payment and touched his shoulder with her hand. The boy looked towards her breasts and blushed a little with embarrassment. He thought that she looked quite delightful. Jingwen asked where he was looking and called him a fool. She looked at him and asked what he was thinking about. Jiang Chung asked, how about repaying him by joining him for a mountain hike this weekend? She decided that she didn't think he would ask for something so noble. The weekend promises to be fun. She is sure that next time will be even more fun. So they agreed while looking at the most beautiful sunrise. The boy asked if he could ask her a personal question. The girl asked to ask. She wondered to herself what he wanted to know about her. Jiang Chung looked into her eyes and asked if she had a boyfriend. Jingwen replied no. She couldn't understand why he suddenly asked about this. Does he really like her? He probably wants to confess to her and she is very nervous. She thought about how she could agree. The sound of a car was heard next to them, and headlights blinded their silhouettes. Jiang Chung became wary and turned his head towards the white car. The car drove up very close to them. The boy couldn't understand what was happening. The car stopped right next to them and a guy began to get out of it. The man was very aggressive and cast an angry glance at the couple. Several more guys came out behind him with huge wooden bats and knives. One of the men pointed to the boy to the boss and said that it was him. The boss laughed and asked if he knew not to mess with the wrong people. Jiang Chung said in response that they also dared to bring their friends to take revenge. It seems this will be the end of their evening. The boy asked the girl what show she wanted him to put on. Jingwen thought that if they had not stopped them, she would have said yes to his confession. Jiang Chung promised the girl to do whatever she said. She asked to beat the crap out of them. The man took out his saber and said in a menacing tone that they were crazy to flirt here in front of them. He began to wave his sharp saber in front of him as he approached the guys. Jiang Chung explained to his opponent that he was too weak and it was quite boring. Why don't they both attack? The boss asked if he was pretending to be a hero. He asked his guys not to feel sorry for him and to beat him to death. They'll finish him off and send him off to the party. Jiang Chung clenched his fists and exclaimed that they would be lucky if they could walk after this. The boy approached one of them, to a man who was holding a sharp saber in his hands. With a lightning-quick movement, he gave him a welcome and called it all laughter. The boy very quickly scattered all these guys and they fell to the ground with a roar. Jiang Chung spread his arms to the side and exclaimed that it was too weak and he was already bored. The boss clenched his teeth and replied that he had hardly beaten one, but he already had so much ambition. Jiang Chung replied that in order to show off, you need to have some skills, and he has them. The boss gave the command to rush everyone together and let him show what he is capable of. Jingwen was afraid for the boy and asked him to be careful. Jiang Chung asked the beauty not to worry in response. He promised to beat the crap out of them. The boy rushed towards his opponent like lightning. His foot was already near the pile of garbage, and he knocked 2 people to the ground. Then the boy approached the rest of the guys and began to scatter them. Jingwen cheered for him and shouted at him not to give up and to keep it up. She encouraged him more and more. Jiang Chung continued to scatter all these arrogant, armed guys. It was a dark night outside, and lanterns were shining around. The fight continued, and teeth flew in different directions, and screams of pain from the opponents were heard around. The boy kept beating these armed guys, all of them in turn. Sometimes he hit them at the same time, as if he had not 2 fists, but many more. Jiang Chung was incredibly strong, and his abilities were noticeable. He was simply an ace in his field and scattered the whole bunch of these arrogant, unscrupulous guys. The boss thought, looking at the boy, that he was too strong and pulled back, and he decided that he absolutely had to run and headed towards the alley. But before he could take even a couple of steps, Jiang Chung grabbed his hand by the throat. He pushed him and threw him straight to the ground. The guy fell backwards onto the asphalt. When the boy wanted to hit him, clenching his fists, he asked him for mercy. Jiang Chung asked what kind of mercy he was talking about and said that he didn't seem to be putting his life at all. He promised the guy to beat the crap out of him, and a heavy fist flew straight into his face. The guy again began to say that he was a non-entity and did not immediately understand who he was dealing with. He asked to take pity on him and not to beat him, to forgive him for his behavior. He began to apologize again, falling to his knees in front of Jiang Cheng. The guy swore that he would never contact him again. Then the boy answered the enemy that it was not up to him to decide whether to take pity or not and looked at his companion. When the girl approached the enemy, he chuckled while kneeling in front of her. The guy called her Madam Boss and asked her to show mercy. Jingwen replied that she was not their boss lady and asked them to stop calling her that. But the guy fell to his knees again and said that they were very, very sorry and called her Madam Boss. He asked to talk to Jiang Cheng and let them leave. Then the boy asked him to calm down and get away, never catch their eye again. The guy again thanked the lady boss and the boy for letting them go. The girl asked how dare he use them to call her that. When did she become his wife? Jiang Cheng replied that he didn't say anything. They just started calling her that, but he didn't complain. She gave him a contemptuous look and asked what there was to complain about. She grabbed the boy by the ear again and asked if she wasn't beautiful enough for him. Let him take a closer look and tell if she is good enough for him. Jiang Cheng immediately replied that of course it was good. Then the girl immediately let him go. The boy, rubbing his ear, said that she was really ruthless. Jingwen said that she had to be ruthless to make sure he remembered this. Jiang Cheng said that he would remember and it wouldn't happen again. He asked permission to accompany her, but the girl said that she was already home and he could leave. She waved to him and they said goodbye. The girl said that they would see each other tomorrow at school. Jiang Cheng began walking down the corridor towards the door the next morning. He carefully approached the door and put his hand on the handle, opening it. When the boy opened the door, he was very surprised and asked if this was his office. There were many gifts on the table. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him. Jingwen asked if he was surprised. He became quite popular among the students at school and is now a hero. Jiang Cheng said that this was too much. The girl explained that there were still a lot of letters for him and asked him to put everything in order. The boy was even more surprised and noticed that these pink letters had hearts on them. Could they really be love letters? But he didn't care and decided to see what was written there. The letter was addressed to her brother and said that it was time to tell him about her feelings. She can clearly imagine every part of his body. His face keeps popping into his mind. She suffers and misses him very much. In the second letter, the girl greeted him and wrote that they were made for each other. She is not embarrassed by the age difference and believes that they will become an ideal couple. Tonight, she will be waiting for him at the hotel. The boy was shocked and could not understand what was going on in their heads. Jingwen explained that he had been a hero to them since the day he saved the school. This is just the tip of the iceberg of their love for him. But she asked him to be careful because they also love to make fun of people. Jiang Cheng thanked the girl for her understanding and exclaimed that he was running to class. As he walked down the corridor, a girl called out to him. He turned in her direction and began to listen. The girl explained that they were all very grateful to him for his action in the gym. The boy asked to stop. He just did what he had to do. The girl explained that she never thanked him for saving her from Qianshuo. She asked if he was free that evening and asked permission to treat him to dinner. Jiang Cheng jokingly asked if she shouldn't offer herself to him in this situation. When the girl did not understand him, he explained that he was just joking and said that they would call in the evening since he had a lesson. In front of us was a sports ground and a physical education lesson began. Jiang Cheng told his students that they lined up very neatly today, which is good. But this is quite unusual and what they want from him. Then one of the guys turned to Mr. Jiang Cheng and asked if he could teach them martial arts. The boy replied that it was not so simple. Why do they want to learn it or just want to start a fight? The guy answered the teacher that no, and they were not going to fight. He just wants to learn kung fu and become as handsome as him. One of the girls asked him to forget about it and look at himself. The second asked not to blacken the face of their hero with your own. Wasn't he the one who defied Mr. Jiang last time? The boy asked the guys to first give him a clear reason, then they would talk. One of the girls asked her brother if he had seen Qianqian's love letter. Qianqian asked not to talk nonsense because she did not write such a thing. But the girl continued to talk about it and insist that she wrote it and she saw it herself. Jiang Cheng spread his hands to the side and asked him to stop trying to prank him. Now we need to start the lesson. He gave the boys the task of starting with a run. The boy was surprised, as they were surprisingly obedient today. He really seemed to make a strong impression on them. Jiang Cheng called Chu Xin and said that he had made a reservation at Huaxia restaurant. But the girl asked if she hadn't said that she was giving treats today. The boy replied that it was not his style to force a girl to pay and said that they would see each other on the spot. Chu Xin agreed, and they said goodbye. Jiangcheng thought that he heroically saved her when they first met at school. Since then, they have not crossed paths. And now, she suddenly invited him to a cafe. He feels like something is brewing. The boy was already near this restaurant and suddenly the girl called him. Chu Xin approached him and asked how long he had been waiting. Jiangcheng replied that he had just arrived. He explained that he had ordered several dishes and asked to go inside. The girl immediately agreed and they went into a cafe. There were already plates of food on the table. Chu Xin asked how he knew that she liked these dishes. He probably made inquiries about her preferences. Jiangcheng replied that in order to share dinner with such a beauty, he had to do his homework. The girl said that she didn't know he was so caring, and she said that his girlfriend was very lucky. Jiangcheng replied that her parents must be hiding her well, because he doesn't even know what she looks like. Chu Xin was a little embarrassed and surprised that such a good man was lonely. It was a good surprise for her. Jiangcheng said that if his girlfriend was as beautiful as her, it would be great. Chu Xin blushed a little and threw a questioning glance at him. She exclaimed, holding her face with her hands, that he embarrassed her. But the boy said that this was the absolute truth. Then she asked to stop and start eating. Jiangcheng noticed that the food here was good and it had completely conquered his stomach. He asked if the girl had had enough or wanted to go somewhere else, then he could go with her. Chu Xin replied that she was full and said that it was too late, maybe next time. She takes him at his word. She will ask him about it in a week when she is free. Jiangcheng smiled back at the girl and called her lady and said that anytime. Chu Xin looked out the window and noticed that it was raining outside. She said that it looked like she was going to get wet. The boy replied that she would get wet in such clothes and catch a cold. He can't let her walk around like this in the rain. The boy asked the girl to give him 1 minute and she immediately agreed. Jiangcheng stepped aside and called his father. He explained that he needed a little help. The father asked what kind of trouble he got into this time and told him to sort out his problems himself. Jiangcheng explained that he just wanted to ask him to send a car to pick him up. It's raining outside. He doesn't care if he gets wet, but he's not sure his daughter-in-law will be okay after that. My father immediately asked where he was and said he would send a car right away. He promised to send a car just so that he would tell the location. Before he had time to send the geolocation, the car had already arrived at the cafe. A man entered the room and said that he had come to pick them up. The girl asked the secretary what he was doing here. "Isn't this the secretary of the education department?" Chu Xin told the boy when they arrived at the house that they were already there. Jiangcheng asked to take her inside, but the girl replied that she was already here and everything would be fine with her. Jiangcheng said that such a beauty could attract all kinds of trouble. He will be calmer if he sees her off. It continued to rain heavily outside. Jiangcheng and Chu Xi walked down the corridor towards the door. The girl said that she was already at the threshold and now she thought for sure he could be calm. But the boy replied that no, they were still outside and he would take her inside. She opened the door and said that she had already crossed the threshold. Chu Xi asked if he might want to come over for tea. Jiangcheng immediately agreed. The girl began to turn on the light, but for some reason it did not turn on. The guy explained that he thought the wiring might have been damaged due to the rain and asked that we leave it to him. He promised to fix the wiring and asked to wait for him here. The girl agreed and apologized for the inconvenience. The boy left and was gone for half an hour. When he returned, he rang the bell so as not to embarrass the girl. Chu Xi immediately went to the door and began to open it for the boy to come in. The girl immediately thanked Jiangcheng for helping her with the wiring. He replied that this was nothing and was not worth gratitude. Chu Xi, looking at the boy, said that he was all wet and he had better take off his wet clothes, otherwise he might catch a cold. Jiangcheng told the girl that he was too strong to catch a cold, but before he could finish speaking, he began to sneeze. Then Chu Xi asked him to stop pretending to be tough. She reached for his clothes and said she would get him some medicine. He didn't expect that he actually caught a cold and felt a little embarrassed. Chu Xi went to get some water and pills and handed him a glass of warm water. The boy took the pill and sneezed again after that. The girl asked if it would be better for him to stay with her for the night. Jiangcheng was very surprised by this question and asked if she was sure about this. Chu Xi got angry and asked what he was thinking about. He will spend the night in the guest room. If he hadn't caught a cold because of the rain, she wouldn't have allowed him to stay. Jiangcheng thanked the girl and apologized. He asked permission to stay. Then the girl asked him to stop being cute and said that she would take him to the guest room. Chu Xi opened the door for him, showing him the room, and asked him not to stay up late since he was sick. The boy thought that he would need to get up early tomorrow and prepare a surprise for her. And then the next day came. Jiang Chung woke up after spending the night with Chu Shi. A very tasty aroma reached the girl and she began to sniff. She couldn't understand where it smelled so good. Then she remembered that Jiang Chung stayed with her yesterday. We need to get up quickly because we can't let him see her like this. She began to open the door and look inside. The girl exclaimed that it looked very cool and asked if he needed an assistant. Jiang Chung replied that he could not allow a beauty like her to be an assistant. He just asks her to sit down and eat. The boy asked the girl how it tasted. Chu Shi replied that it was just great and she didn't expect that a man like him was so good at cooking. Jiang Chung looked into her eyes and explained that this was gratitude for the fact that she allowed him to stay last night. Chu Shi said that they had dinner yesterday and were even driven by their secretary. I wonder what will happen today if he cooks himself. Then the boy asked, how about asking the head of the education department to give them a lift to the school? But then I thought it would be better to ask my father to be their driver after he slept with her, otherwise she would start whining again. Jiang Chung laughed and said that he was just joking. He called a taxi and the car would be here by then, so they would finish eating. Chu Shi asked them to hurry up, otherwise they would be late. Jiang Chung and Chu Shi had already arrived at the tall school building. Chu Shi explained to the boy that she needed to prepare for the first lesson and they would see each other later. While they were saying goodbye, a girl from the second floor was watching them through the window. It was the director and she was dialing someone on the phone. She said that she saw Jiang Chung and Chu Shi come to school together today. She thinks that he does not allow the option of grandchildren from mixed marriages. But he said that there was nothing of the kind, and mixed marriage or not, he was simply obliged to give birth to a grandson. The father decided that his little boy was smart, but not fast enough, since he still doesn't have a child. Is there something else she doesn't know about? In fact, he spent the night with Chu Shi today. The man said that she really didn't know about it. I asked how he found out. She explained that she has her own people everywhere, and this is true. Maybe ask him tonight. That's what they agreed to do, and Jiang Chung already walked towards himself. He received a message from his sister. She wrote that Dad knew that he spent the night with that girl. He is waiting at home, and she asks him to get ready. Jiang Chung thought that it seemed like the secretary had blabbed everything to him. He decided to see if he could somehow fool him this time. The boy opened the door and asked if he had been busy all week. What a surprise to see him here. When the son came in, the father asked him to stop being a fool. He knows perfectly well why he returned. Then the son said that he was always so busy with his jam-packed schedule and he had no idea what he was doing. Then his father looked at him sternly and asked him to tell him what happened yesterday. Should he start preparing his wedding gift and room already? Jiang Chung asked his father not to cook anything. He got it all wrong and he spent the night in the guest room. Then his father started yelling at him and said that his month was almost over. He doesn't care who it is, but he should get married as soon as possible. The mother asked which of them he gets along with better, or she should organize one office for 5 of them. Jiang Chung asked his mother to calm down and not joke like that. He is already happy with his office the way it is. He told his father that he had had a long day and wanted to rest. The father sighed and asked what kind of child he was. And his mother said that he himself knows what to do. The boy went up to the second floor to his room and, exhaling, said that he had finally gotten rid of them. His sister met him. She called her brother. He asked what was the matter. The girl began to explain that if Dad found out that she warned him in advance, he would not give her pocket money. Jiang Chung asked why she was staring like that. Or she's trying to get him to give him some cash again. Then the boy took out a wad of money and asked if this was enough. If not, he thinks he will have to consider reducing the cost of her food. My sister asked me not to stay up late and said that she had enough. Jiang Chung said that he would then return to his room. When he left, my sister thought to herself that her older brother was very stingy. How could anyone even like him? Before he could get out the door, he ran as fast as he could somewhere towards the exit. The sister asked where he was going. Jiang Chung replied that something happened and asked him to keep it a secret from his mother and father. Then the girl asked to pay her for her silence. The boy approached the door. It was already dark outside and the stars illuminated the sky. He thought about Mayor calling for help, but what could have happened to her in such a place? Although, with her proud nature, she must really be in trouble to ask for help. He heard her asking Zhang Lei to get away from her. Jiang Chung realized that it was Mayor's voice. The guy grabbed her hand and told her not to even think about leaving. The girl asked to be released. Jiang Cheng ran towards this sound in order to understand what was ultimately happening. When Mayor saw the boy, she asked him to take her away from here. But Zhang Lei said that it was none of his business. He looked menacingly at the boy and pointed his finger at him and asked him to get out of here. Zhang Cheng replied that he couldn't stand it when people pointed fingers at him. With one deft movement, he made a move on this impudent man and he grabbed his hand. Mayor immediately ran up to the boy and asked him to quickly take her away from here. Zhang Cheng asked if she knew him. The girl replied that they were not close. He was just an acquaintance and asked me to go. Zhang Lei called him a scoundrel and exclaimed that then he should not even dare to think about taking her with him. Zhang Cheng thought that there seemed to be too many unanswered questions. He'll have to ask after he gets her out of here. The girl took his hand and asked him to run faster. The boy replied that he would not leave here without her today. Opponents blocked the boy's path. Zhang Lei brought his brothers here and asked them to kill this guy, since he was probably tired of living. The guy asked how he even dared to contact them on their territory and asked his guys to break this guy up. Jiang Cheng expected the attack and asked the opponents to attack him. He said that they could not do anything. Then the guys clenched their fists and, screaming, rushed forward to meet the boy. A heavy fist flew in their direction, scattering all the guys. The opponents took a good beating from Jiang Cheng, but they did not give up. Zhang Lei gave the command to the guys to quickly finish off this scoundrel, and they again rushed to meet the enemy. The boy clenched his fist again and decided that they really seemed to enjoy digging their own grave. He flew up to a bunch of scoundrels and began beating them one by one. Many blows flew towards the opponents and they continually scattered in different directions. Jiang Cheng walked up to Meyer and asked her to leave. He explained that he had called a taxi and would take her home. Meanwhile, the full moon was shining outside, making the night bright and beautiful. They drove up to the girl's house. Huge high-rise buildings rose to the sky, and in some of them, the light was still shining. He began to pull the girl out of the car and said that they were already there. Mayor replied with a heavy sigh that the beer had gone to her head and she was feeling dizzy. The boy felt that she smelled like beer and he wondered how much she drank. Jiang Cheng asked her to hold on to him and promised to help her enter the house. They went up to the 5th floor and went into the apartment where Mayor lived. They went into the bathroom where there was a wash basin. Jiang Cheng asked if she felt better. The girl replied that she wanted to sleep. The boy replied that he would then put her to bed. She kept talking about how she wanted to sleep. Jiang Cheng carried her in his arms into the room. He wanted to put her to bed as soon as possible so that she would feel even better. He threw the girl onto the bed. She collapsed and immediately began to fall asleep. She passed out very quickly because she was drunk. The boy noticed that the dress was dirty and decided that he would have to take it off. But this may cause misunderstandings later. This is not the time to think about it, though. Jiang Cheng felt that her body was beckoning him, and he stared at her. He decided to behave more calmly because he is a gentleman. It's not proper for a gentleman to do that. Jiang Cheng turned away and decided that there was simply no need to look. He will do it quickly. And now he breathed a sigh of relief. He was already heading towards his door to leave the room. But then I thought that she drank a lot. What if something happens to her? The boy decided to stay on the sofa and look after her today while relaxing on the sofa. And now, the long-awaited morning has arrived. The girl woke up and got out of bed. She asked why he was at her house and asked what he did to her. Jiang Cheng replied that he didn't do anything. She was drunk as hell, and he didn't see her out. Mayor replied that although he took care of her, no one asked him to stay here, and who changed her clothes. She asked if he took advantage of her. Jiang Cheng said that he was the one who changed her clothes, but only because her clothes were dirty. He asked if he would sleep on the sofa if he took advantage of her condition. Mayor was thinking that she really had too much to drink last night. Since he was sleeping on the couch, he couldn't do anything to her. Besides, she herself asked him for help. The girl thanked the boy about yesterday. He replied, "Don't worry, it's nothing." He asked who this Zhang Lei was, with whom they crossed paths yesterday. They are just acquaintances with him. Mayor explained that he was her ex's brother. She herself did not expect to see him there. This is not worth attention, and she asks him to forget about it. He asked her not to worry and said that he had gone to school. The girl thought, looking at the boy's back, that he was too kind. Jiang Cheng walked outside and thought about his sister. She was just calling him. The sister asked her brother which of his daughters-in-law he spent the night with. The boy asked her to stop talking nonsense and why her head was filled with such heresy. The girl told her father that she already knew and she could no longer hide it. Now he is on his own. I can't wait to see his wife or child at their home. Jiang Cheng noticed that it looked so much like her. The sky was blue and light, The sun illuminated everything around, making us happy. Jong Chung approached the beautiful Jan. The girl noticed that he was in a good mood. Will he tell me why they are colleagues after all? The boy winked at her. He asked how he could not be happy when he sees such a cutie in the morning. Suddenly, his mother entered the room. She wondered if she was disturbing them and noticed that they were having a good time here. The boy realized that his mother was already trying to find out everything about her. Jan asked the woman if they could help her with anything and called her the director. The woman replied that there was one task for them. They must have this document stamped by the Ministry of Education. The son replied that, of course, everything would be done without any problems. The girl also said that it was not a question. Jong Chung thought that he was embarrassed by this situation. But their relationship has not yet been revealed. For now, it is better to just listen to her. The mother told the boys that they could just take her car to get there. She pointed at the table and said that the keys were on the table. The car is in the parking lot. Jong Chung thought that everything was clear to him. She's prepared and is definitely up to something. And now they were already outside in the huge campus parking lot. Jong Chung asked Jan if she was afraid that he would be driving if he rarely drove. The girl replied that, on the contrary, she was interested in knowing what it was like. The boy said that he was taking her at her word. They just asked her not to be too scared. And now, they began to climb into the car. Jong Chung got behind the wheel. The girl asked not to worry and said to go already. And so the boy pressed the gas and the car started moving very quickly. Jan widened her eyes, probably really scared. The car was driving faster and faster. Jong Chung tried to be careful. The girl took a breath and said that she thought he was a very good driver. Jong Chung replied that when he was with the squad on missions, he had to drive quickly. Now he has nowhere to rush and everything will be safe and smooth. Therefore, he rarely drives. This is unusual for him. The boy thought to himself that he needed to find out whether this was part of his mother's plan or not. By the way, they must deliver this document annually or not. Jan replied that yes, but usually the director does this. Then he has no idea why this time they should take the documents. Jong Chung thought to himself that mom could just deliver this directly to dad's house. His parents are definitely involved. The guys ended up in the Ministry of Education. Jan asked the boy if they would deliver it directly to the boss. The meeting hasn't been scheduled, so I don't think it's a good idea. The boy replied that everything was fine and asked her not to worry. They began to approach the door and he wondered what kind of meeting there would be. It's just his father. When he pressed the bell, his father asked to come in. The father asked his son why he was here. The son replied that his mother asked them to deliver this document and asked him to take a look. The father said that he did not expect the director to personally send the two of them to send him and thanked his son. Jong Chung replied that there was no problem and called his father the boss, explaining that they were happy about it. Meanwhile, the father decided that his future daughter-in-law looked good. He must help his son score more points. The father asked to look at 2 tickets to a sports and entertainment event. He handed his son the tickets and said that these were for the two of them. Jong Chung thanked the boss and said that they would definitely visit him, and if that's all, then it's time for them. The boy decided that this was a good move. This is clearly a coercion to date. The girl said that she didn't know that she and the boss got along so well, but the boy replied that they barely knew each other. He thought to himself that he could not allow it to be revealed that he was his son. It's best to keep it a secret in the first place. He doesn't need a gold digger. Jong Chung wondered if she would mind him taking her home. Jan replied that there was no problem and then they could return to school together. The father looked at the girl as they left his office. He thought that this future daughter-in-law was not lacking in appearance and figure, and besides, she was sensitive and smart. He hopes his boy can get her to their home as quickly as possible. The day was very beautiful and bright. Cars were racing along the highway. In front of us is the Tenai School. The car was already approaching this building. There were a lot of different guys standing on the street. The boy cast a curious glance at them. He wondered why there were so many hooligans here all of a sudden. Are they looking for adventure? Jong Chung said that there were strangers near the school and he would go check. And Jan asked for help returning the car keys to the director. The girl agreed and asked the boy to take care of himself. He replied that he would try. When Jong Chung went outside, he couldn't understand where they had gone. We need to find them urgently. He can't let them harass students. Around the corner, the boy heard that someone asked to leave behind and called them scoundrels. One of the guys asked to be a good boy and will remain intact. You just need to follow them and they won't harm her. The girl asked to roll her lip because she wouldn't go anywhere with them. The man replied that he was afraid it was not for her to decide. He gave the command to stuff it into a bag and send it to the boss. The girl began to scream, begging for help. The man exclaimed that she herself wanted to do it in a bad way. The boss asked, "Isn't it easy?" He gave the command to his guys to do it quickly and leave here. Jiangcheng blocked their way and asked the guys to stop immediately. Then the boss asked who else he was and threw a contemptuous, angry look at him. The boy replied that it didn't matter. The main thing is that they let the girls go. The man asked who he thought he was and said not to meddle in their affairs and they wouldn't bother him then. Jiangcheng asked if that was true and wondered what if he was meddling in his affairs now. The man replied that he did not know them, the famous White Tiger Gang, and asked not to stand in their way. The boy replied that this was the first time he had heard such nonsense about some tigers. The man was very angry at such insolence and told his boys to teach the boy a lesson. He gave the command to kill him and feed him to the dogs. Then the boy clenched his fists and asked who cared about his gang of tiger cubs. He asked them not to take a single step back and waited for the enemy to attack. The guys immediately began to approach him faster and faster, but the first blow flew straight into the man's jaw. He began to scatter all the guys, hitting them with his fists right in the face. When he went to karate, he swore an oath not to apply the acquired knowledge behind these walls. He took the same oath when he received his higher education, and fist after fist flew into the faces of these scoundrels. He threw them away one after another, and they fell, hitting the wall and the floor with their backs. One of the guys said that they couldn't handle this guy and advised him to get out of here. The boss replied that they would do so and asked to help him get back on his feet. He exclaimed with a parting glance at Jiangcheng that they were not finished yet. They'll cross paths again and he'll become crippled. But the boy replied that if he sees them here, he will make cripples out of them. Jiangcheng glanced at the bag that already contained the girl. It was Mei Er. The girl exclaimed that she was very scared and began to cry. When the boy approached her, she threw herself into his arms, all in tears. Jiangcheng began to calm her down and said that they were no longer here. He asked her not to cry, otherwise she would stop being sweet. Mei Er continued to say that he couldn't even imagine how scared she was. They would have drugged her a little more and sold her. It's okay, she's safe now. He is there and will not allow anyone to harm her. Jiangcheng asked how these guys found her. The girl explained that they were from the White Tiger Gang. One day, she crossed paths with their boss while out shopping and he asked her out on a date, and she refused him. The boy understood how it all happened. Mei Er thanked him for saving her. She can't even imagine what could have happened to her if he hadn't been there. Jiangcheng asked if she was too close to him. He told the girl that these bandits had already left. She replied that it was an accident. Jiangcheng laughed and said that it was all nothing and he didn't mind. Let him hug him whenever he wants. He doesn't mind lending himself to her. He already knows where she will stop. Mei Er exclaimed that there was no way and asked him to be more serious, but he couldn't take her home. After all, she is still a little scared. The boy replied that of course he would. After that, he took her hand. They went towards her house. Jiangcheng said that today he is her guardian angel. Mei Er said that she was very grateful to him for saving her and for walking her home. The boy replied that there was no problem because it was a trivial matter. Mei Er asked if he wanted to come in for a drink. Jiangcheng replied that since she returned home so safely, he had no more worries. The girl thought that she was determined to invite him in, but he rejected her. What a big, thick-headed idiot. And then the next day came. Jiangcheng approached a huge tall building. Zhang called her friend a good fellow and said that she had heard about his exploits yesterday. The boy asked how she found out. The girl replied that of course she knew about such a popular guy. If he had brought the grandmother across the road, she would have found out. Rumors about his valiant deeds are already spreading throughout the school. Jiangcheng replied that he couldn't even do something good without becoming famous. Jan said that she knew much more. His birthday, height, weight, and hobbies. She even finds out when he starts dating someone. The boy immediately laughed and replied that she had him on her fingertips. And he tries to get ahead of everyone so that others don't take him away. Jan said that every girl at school knows these things. She just accidentally learned about everything from her students. Jiangcheng asked why they were discussing this nonsense and he didn't understand it. It would be better to focus on studying. And in general, they are not supposed to know this. Jan explained that if they see their idol teacher, they can find out everything they want about him. Some even mentioned that he met with them as many as 5 times, and each of them abandoned him. She asked if this was true. Jiangcheng exclaimed that this was all nonsense and there was no need to listen to them. How can you leave such a nice guy like him? Jan looked down and said that she looked like he was angry and maybe they were right after all. But the boy put his hand to his head and exclaimed that these were just rumors. The girl told him that she went to class and let him let off steam alone. Jiang Cheng closed his eyes and thought that the lesson was finally over. And these students are good at gossip. Suddenly, when he went outside, Miss Jiao appeared behind him. She began to run towards him, stopping him. Jiang Cheng asked if he could help her with anything. The girl explained that she was afraid that these bandits would come again. She wants to ask if he can take her home since she is scared. He won't refuse her if she's telling the truth. Mayer again began to beg him and ask if he would take her there. The boy smiled and said that of course he would help. The girl exclaimed that this was simply wonderful and he really helped her out. Jiang Cheng said that, then we need to go and he will call a taxi. Mr. Jiang quickly found a taxi for them to take Mayer home safe and sound. While the guys were talking in front of the car, the White Tiger people were watching them. The men were standing nearby, and the bald man immediately recognized Chen as the guy who beat up his group last time. Ju didn't want to hear anything and reminded his colleague that they had to handle such a trivial task. The interlocutor was alarmed by this news because their opponent was not so simple, and behind him there could be someone more influential than the tiger. However, the boss's confidant insisted on restraining the young man despite his strength. Baldy was forced to agree and asked whether they should go to the guy right away. Ju thought this question was stupid and even hit his subordinate in the face. The boss's close associate did not want to get into a fight with an experienced fighter without proper preparation. Therefore, the men began to leave, which would first send a team to find out more information about Zhang. At this time, the former soldier looked around and caught himself thinking that he felt being followed. The teacher began to get into the car and was determined that he would not allow the bandits to harm his lady Jiao. The taxi moved, and Chung decided it was time to talk to the girl about the incident. First of all, the guy was interested in whether Mayer knew anything about the White Tiger gang. At first, the beauty was surprised, but admitted that she knew that this gang obeyed the tiger, and the bandits themselves were considered inhuman. She irritably said that many students had suffered at their hands, and local store sellers were forced to pay money to the group. This information angered the former soldier, and he could not believe that everyone simply accepted the lawlessness. Mayer then admitted that this happened because calling the police only caused more trouble. Mr. Zhang confidentially told his companion that he would definitely deal with her offenders and asked her to call immediately if anything happened. The girl was embarrassed, but was sincerely grateful to the young guy for the care he provided. During their conversation, the road to Mrs. Jiao's house flew by unnoticed, although it was already dark outside. As soon as the couple got out of the taxi, the young man noticed that they were able to get home without additional incidents. However, before going to the apartment, Mayer wanted her colleague to promise her something. It turned out that the girl was afraid to return home alone after the incident and hoped that Chung could keep her company. Before agreeing to escort the lady on a permanent basis, the former soldier wanted to know what he would get in return. Mrs. Jiao embarrassedly asked what interests her hero, but he invited the teacher to think for herself. Mayer sensed the hint and hastened to announce that her body would not participate in their deal. Mr. Zhang chuckled, agreed to do the volunteer work, and turned around to head to his home. Several days passed from that moment, and Chung, as promised, walked the beauty home after work. The teacher was very grateful for the help, although the former soldier considered it a trifling favor. As soon as they reached home, Chung left again, leaving Mayer confused as to why her colleague never asked to visit. Members of the White Tiger gang watched the young man from afar, while the bald man said that in front of them was an ordinary physical education teacher. The man wanted to ask his close boss what they would do with him after Zhang turned out to be an ordinary guy. Therefore, Ju promised with an evil smile that they would dig the young man's grave that evening. The group began executing their plan as soon as night fell in the city. The bald man was sent along with several dozen people to deal with Zhang. The group called out to the former soldier, and their leader promised that they would not let the physical education teacher leave so easily. The gangsters began to advance, counting on the fact that they had gained superiority due to their numbers. However, Chung greeted them with a wide smile, glad that he did not have to look for the bandits for long. The bald man was sure that their enemy was bragging, so he ordered the guys to attack all together. The former soldier raised his fist to strike, noting the naivety of his rivals, who could not sensibly appreciate his strength. In a matter of seconds, the young man incapacitated one gangster after another without much effort. The leader watched his men fly apart and began to doubt that Chung was human. A couple of minutes had passed since the start of the fight, but absolutely all members of the White Tiger could no longer fight. Looking around the battlefield, Mr. Zhang noticed Baldy, who was supposed to be the last to meet his fate. The teacher quickly approached the last member of the gang and reached out to grab his opponent by the collar. The bald man trembled with fear and begged the young guy to spare his life and let him leave. Cheng did not see any reason why he should let the leader go, but he promised to give information in return. Of course, this made Mr. Zhang angry at first because he thought it was all just idle chatter. But the gang member was genuinely scared and swore that the ex-soldier really must know something. The bald man stammered that the teacher must save the girl because his brother Jiu would soon capture her. Cheng realized that he had too little time and still hit the leader of the attackers. The man was thrown back and rolled several meters along the asphalt. At this time, Zhang did not waste any time and ran to Mei Er's house, hoping to make it in time. The city streets at night were deserted, and only a few windows had lights on. The White Tiger gang members held Zhao's wrists and led her to the boss under Jiu's supervision. The guys were wondering how the other brothers were doing, but they didn't think there was anything to worry about. However, just at that moment, Jona's cry was heard behind them, demanding that the teacher be released. The young man did not talk to the gangsters and immediately attacked the boss close to him. With one kick, the former soldier incapacitated the group commander. And then he switched to the others, trying to free the hostage as quickly as possible. The gym teacher had amazing fighting skills, so a bunch of criminals weren't a problem. The gangsters didn't even have time to really understand anything before they received injuries, after which they could no longer fight. Watching what was happening, Gio realized that even 30 people could not cope with Cheng's power. Everyone who survived the duel realized that it was time for them to retreat, and even the boss's close associate did not argue with this. The ex-soldier followed them because he didn't think they had gotten a good enough lesson. But Mrs. Zhao rushed after her, clinging to her hero's back and begged him not to leave. Jiang understood perfectly well that the girl was scared, so he stayed to reassure his colleague. Several minutes passed, but Mei Er continued to cry, so Qing thought about defusing the situation. The ex-soldier couldn't come up with anything better than a stupid joke about his attractiveness that made Zhao drool over him. However, the teacher was still too worried and was not going to let her only defender go. The young man worriedly noted the late hour of the day, which made their hug misunderstand. Then Mei Er pulled away and hopefully invited Zhang to stay at her apartment that night. The former soldier behaved nobly and promised to go with the girl to look after her. Thus, they reluctantly broke the hug and headed to Zhao's apartment. Cheng carefully patted the girl on the shoulder and told her that she should take a good rest. The brown-haired woman touched the man's wrist, assuming that he was going to slip away as soon as she fell asleep. Zhang admitted that he could stay the night and even tried to get into Mei Er's bed. However, the girl snorted and shook her head, declaring that her colleague might not even dream about it. However, Cheng was not embarrassed by this fact, since the two of them really needed to go to bed. The physical education teacher headed to the guest room while Zhao thought that only with him she felt safe. The next day, it was time to return to school, and the guys slowly walked there together. The brown-haired girl decided to ask her friend to always go with her, and Jiang agreed, promising to soon deal with the gang. The girl lit up with enthusiasm, asking whether the physical education teacher would accompany her every day and also spend the night. The young man was embarrassed because his plans did not include spending the night on the couch all the time. However, it seemed that Mei Er was very worried that the bandits would show up at her house again, so the young man agreed. On this note, they said goodbye, and the former soldier promised that he would not forget his promise. Cheng didn't have his first lesson, so he slowly trudged along the empty school corridors. Suddenly, a voice called out to him, causing the teacher to stop and look in the direction of the sound. Miss Hu stopped nearby and hurried to ask if it was true that he and Miss Zhao were dating. The girl said that everyone at school has been talking about this lately. Cheng sighed heavily, blaming his popularity, and wondered why the woman even cared. The young man assumed that Miss Hu was in love with him, and she began to actively deny, hiding behind the fact that she just liked to chat. They came to the conclusion that the girl was just having fun, so the brunette demanded that the truth be revealed. The former soldier did not understand why he had to tell any details of his personal life, and he reminded that Hu is not his girlfriend and therefore has no right to ask such questions. However, the physical education teacher agreed to tell if the brunette agreed to become his mate. At first, Miss Hu froze in shock, but quickly pulled herself together and declared that she was not interested in such things. Mr. Zhang admitted that he felt notes of envy in her voice, which greatly angered his colleague. She wanted to leave quickly, so she said that she met with the director and found out that she was looking for Ching. The former soldier was left stranded, realizing that his mother might have heard the rumors too. The weather that day was beautiful and the sun's rays filled the school building with light. However, the guy did not avoid the meeting and headed straight to the director's office. As soon as he sat down opposite the woman, she admitted that she had indeed heard the rumors. This was not surprising since nothing within the walls of the school could escape her attention. Mom asked how things were going, and Chung excitedly asked not to worry about his personal life. However, the young man understood that his parent was simply worried about him, so he asked her not to worry too much. The director nodded, but remembered that Jiang never showed up at home last night. For a second, the guy froze in shock, not understanding how his mother could know about this. However, everything fell into place when the woman told how she talked to her sister about it. The appearance of his son with Mayer was not hidden from the director's eyes, so Chen had to quickly come up with something. He agreed that he did not spend the night at home yesterday, causing his mother to think that he was already close to Zhao. Therefore, the former soldier had to lie that he had met a friend with whom he stayed and spent the night. This news upset the director because she believed that her son was finally lucky, which greatly embarrassed the guy. The blonde believed that Chung should seize his chance and ask if anything is needed. Mr. Zhang was grateful for the help, but promised that he could handle everything on his own. The young man stood up from his seat and was ready to go to the teacher's room if the director did not need anything else. The director promised to provide any help so that her son would have a wife. However, as soon as Chung stepped out into the corridor, he heard a loud scream from one of the school's beauties. The former soldier recognized Cho Sim and saw that some guy was actively pestering her. Jing tried to grab the girl's hands and invited her to dinner, not paying attention to the teacher's request to leave her alone. Mr. Zhang hurried to intervene in the argument, turning Shou towards himself and asking what was going on. At first, the man was unhappy about being interrupted, but he became afraid when he saw Chung in front of him. Cho broke free from the grip of the impudent man and rushed to the physical education teacher, begging him for help. Jing tried to make excuses that he did not pester Miss, but was simply trying to invite her to dinner. Immediately after this, the man hurriedly turned around to leave Jiang's field of vision. However, the physical education teacher still threatened to deal with him if the incident repeated. The man laughed nervously and promised that he understood everything because he really wanted to leave in one piece. However, Chung was in no hurry to let Shou go, thinking that he might have information about the bandits. Mr. Zhang put on a scary look on his face and asked if Jing knew about the White Tiger Gang. The colleague began to look even more worried and tried to avoid a direct answer. But the former soldier did not allow this to happen, and the man had to say that he usually saw them in several places. Cheng was most interested in the underground casino, so he asked how to get into it. Teacher Shou was not sure that he should give out such information, but the physical teacher's fear was stronger. Mr. Jing decided that he could benefit and offered to accompany him there if the physical education teacher would work for him. Naturally, this did not suit the former soldier and he released a threatening aura. Teacher Shou panicked and immediately retreated, shouting that he would tell everything without any favors. The man remembered that the White Tiger Gang casino was located in the basement next to the bar. He also said that the entrance is guarded by guards who do not allow just anyone inside. This satisfied Chung's curiosity, but he finally decided to find out if the teacher knew the boss of the White Tigers. The colleague admitted that he had heard a lot about him, but only those close to him had seen him in person, while Mr. Jing insisted that he was just having fun in the casino from time to time. The physical education teacher was not sure that this could be trusted, but the man looked truly scared. Then the former soldier allowed Shou to finally escape, ordering him not to bother Cho anymore. Mr. Jing accepted the fact that Sim was Chung's girlfriend and promised that he would not even think about her. This assumption confused the couple, but none of them denied this fact. Miss Cho hurried to thank Zhang for his help and offered to treat him to dinner as a token of gratitude. The former soldier remembered that he had promised to take Mayer home, so he was forced to refuse and asked to reschedule the meeting for another day. Fortunately, Sim did not object provided that the young man did not forget about his promise. The rest of the working day passed without much incident, and soon it was time to go home. Miss Huo also left the building when she suddenly saw Chang Chung accompanied by Miss Jiao. Jing Wen decided to call out to Mr. Zhang, still remembering their conversation this morning. The girl looked at the couple and said that she now understood what the young man was hiding from her. The teacher turned her attention to Mayer and demanded to know how long they had been dating. Cheng awkwardly intervened in the conversation, trying to convince Miss Huo that the rumors had misled her. But the woman was sure that she saw everything with her own eyes, so she asked to tell the truth. However, since the couple remained silent, Jingwen decided to leave them alone, reminding the former soldier of the promise. After that, Miss Huo went about her business, leaving her colleagues at a loss. The girl's behavior was quite revealing, and now Mr. Zhang had no doubt that she was jealous. At this time, Mei was more interested in the promise that their colleague was talking about. When Miss Zhao asked about this, Chung again saw the implication in Miss Huo's words. However, he asked the girl not to think too much about it since they were just going to go camping. The former soldier looked at his companion and asked if this news bothered her. Mei was nervous and said that they were just friends, so Mr. Jiang was free to do whatever he wanted. However, the young man did not believe her and admitted that he felt that she was not telling her something. Mrs. Zhao rolled her eyes and noted sadly that her colleague was too narcissistic. However, despite this, the beauty asked to go with them, making the excuse that she was afraid to be alone. The former soldier was in no hurry to answer, wondering if it would be okay to take Mei with him. The girl saw doubts in the young man's eyes and promised that she would not bother them. In the end, Chung decided that nothing bad would happen and agreed to go together. Mrs. Jiao was so happy about this news that she rushed to hug her hero. So the next morning, it was the weekend, and Miss Huo was waiting for her friend at the bus stop. She was a little nervous because Chung was nowhere to be found, although they were already starting to be late. The girl was first noticed by Mei who loudly called her colleague by name. Then Jingwen saw that Mr. Zhang had brought Zhao with him and asked if they really spent the night together. The brown-haired woman hastened to defend her hero and admitted that she herself had followed them on the hike. Miss Huo did not consider this a problem because the more people, the merrier, although she was embarrassed by the appearance of a couple together. Mei lead that they met by chance along the way, and Chung realized that he could not stand more than one girl. Mr. Zhang decided to intervene before the girlfriends started quarreling and hurried to invite them to board the bus. Miss Jiao grabbed the brunette's hand and they hurried inside to take adjacent seats. The former soldier breathed a sigh of relief and mentally scolded the unpredictability of women. The trip was calm, but unfortunately for the group, it started to rain by the time they arrived. Miss Hui and the others decided that it would be better to go to the hotel. The town near the mountains was not too big, which allowed them to quickly find a hotel. However, due to weather conditions, there was only one free room left in the hotel. The girls were upset because there were no more hotels in the area, and the rain forced them to accept at least one room. The group thus found themselves in a small bedroom, staring in confusion at the single double bed. Mr. Zhang was the first to voice the obvious fact and embarrassedly asked if he could sleep between the girls. The brown-haired girl was too embarrassed by such a prospect and screamed that this would not happen. Miss Huo reacted in the same way and ordered the guy to look for a mattress and sleep by the bed. The former soldier realized he didn't have much of a choice and was planning to take an extra bed in the reception area. The young man reached for the phone and dialed the administration's number, wanting to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. The call was answered quickly, but it turned out that there were no more free mattresses left. Mr. Zhang returned to the girls and sadly admitted that he would have to sleep on the bare floor. Jingwen couldn't allow Chung to do this because the room was cold and damp. That is why Mei agreed with her friend, and they decided to let the young man sleep on the bed. However, the girls did not want to give up their sides of the bed, so it was decided to let Zhang sleep in the middle. Naturally, the beauties did not forget to remind the physical teacher not to allow himself any vulgarities. Thus, the guys ended up in the same bed, falling asleep so that there was enough space for everyone. And everything would have been fine, but in the middle of the night, Mei turned to the young man and pressed herself against him. Soon, Jingwen also moved closer to Mr. Zhang and hugged the young man. The former soldier was embarrassed by this state of affairs, but tried to restrain inappropriate thoughts. The next morning arrived, and this time the weather was more suitable for hiking. Miss Ho woke up and started looking around the room, trying to figure out where everyone else was. The girl was outraged that Chung left her, although he promised to devote his free time to her. The brunette got out of bed and, remaining in her nightgown, went in search of her colleagues. The couple was found in the corridor, and from a distance it seemed that Mei was flirting with Zhang. This fact angered Jingwen, although she tried to force herself to calm down. This was difficult for her, and her fists of their own accord clenched the thin fabric at the edges of her pajamas. Mrs. Huo slowly began to move towards the couple without attracting attention to herself. Only when the brunette came close to the guys did she notice that they had arrived quite early. Mei said that they did not wake up their friend because Wen was sleeping soundly, and Mr. Zhang was happy to tell Miss Ho about the wonderful weather and sent her to get ready for a hike. The couple was enjoying a walk when suddenly Ms. Zhao shouted that she was tired and asked for a break. The brown-haired girl reminded that her physical condition was not that good, so she couldn't walk too fast. The former soldier looked at the beauty with displeasure and reminded her that he had warned that this could happen. Mayer tried to convince her friends that she was not complaining, but simply asking them to move a little slower. However, Wen should have noticed that in this case they would reach the top by dark and they would have to spend the night in the mountains. Madame Jiao didn't want this, so she immediately sped up and ran forward. This got them to the top enough to watch the views in awe. Mayer had never climbed to the top before, so she was more surprised than anyone else by the beauty around them. The former soldier reminded the brown-haired girl that the more difficult the work, the greater the reward. Ms. Jiao assessed Cheng's level of education, after which the young man offered to take photographs of the girls. The girlfriends started posing at the top, and the young man managed to take some good photos. As soon as they finished, the guy reminded them that it was time for them to return so as not to be late for work. Mayer was inspired by their trip and admitted that she would gladly go with them again. Mr. Zhang didn't think this was a good idea because he was pretty tired of the two girls. However, they made it home without incident, and soon Monday arrived. Cheng had no classes scheduled that day, so he was going to check on the Tiger Gang. It didn't take him long to hail a taxi and ask him to take him to KTV0. Soon, the driver dropped him off at the desired building, and the former soldier hurried to look around. According to teacher Sko, the gambling den should have been located somewhere nearby. The young man walked forward and soon came across two men who resembled guards. This prompted him to believe that it was in this place that the underground White Tiger Casino was located. Next to KTV0, there was a shabby gate with two large men standing at it. They reacted quite aggressively to Cheng's appearance and advised him to stay away from the warehouse. The former soldier put on an upset look on his face and said that he clearly remembered that there was a gambling house downstairs. The gang member did not believe Mr. Zhang and said that behind them there was only an abandoned warehouse. The young man was not taken aback and turned around to leave, saying that Jing Shuo was an ordinary deceiver. The guards recognized the name of one of their guests and immediately changed their faces, apologizing for their behavior. The man said that Cheng should have immediately said that he was invited and led the guy along. The iron gate opened, allowing the former soldier into the White Tiger Gang's territory. The guards remained on guard outside and promised that their underground casino was always safe. Mr. Zhang watched the visitors, realizing that some of them were closely watching the new arrival. Cheng assumed that he should go and play a few rounds before taking action. The young man chose the first gambling game he came across and placed several bets, participating in a small competition. The former soldier watched the dice rolls and earned more and more money. Mr. Zhang liked to take risks, so he easily raised the bets and he also had an advantage. Cheng had perfect hearing, which helped him determine how hard the dice were thrown. At this time, the boss of the White Tiger Gang was in KTV0, discussing some points with those close to him. Most of all, the head was unhappy with the fact that Jiu never brought Mayer to him. The man could not understand why his people could not cope with one unfortunate enemy. The White Tiger boss thought Jiu was a waste of time and was going to throw him out of the room. Brother Huo cooled the leader's ardor by admitting that she had heard that Cheng was indeed quite tough. The man bowed actively and begged the tiger to give him another chance to prove his usefulness. The gang boss didn't like it, but decided he could let Jiu go for Brother Huo's sake. The leader's close associate could barely contain his panic but sincerely thanked the tiger. Mr. Ho approached his friend and learned that Cheng was an ordinary teacher who was able to put more than 30 of their children to bed. The man thought for a while and then offered his candidacy to the boss in order to look at this guy. The leader allowed his brother to go on a mission, reminding him not to forget about his duty. Mr. Ho promised that he would not cause problems and would just see what the physical education teacher was like. Ju stood behind the man and thanked him for his help with a joyful smile. The boss's close associate was sure that Cheng would be useless against the brown-haired man. Brother Huo lit a cigarette and promised that they would show him that he shouldn't play with the White Tiger Gang. By this time, Mr. Zhang had managed to place several bets and gained the trust of the casino regulars. The young man boasted that he had won $1 million and said that he was going to visit the girls. The head of the establishment wanted to persuade Cheng to stay for a couple more rounds, but the young man insisted on a different kind of fun. In addition, the physical teacher said that he would come tomorrow, so the leader allowed the winner to rest a little. The former soldier pretended to be very interested in visiting KTV0. Thanks to this, the casino manager was happy to announce that his brothers outside would take the new guest there. As soon as Cheng headed for the exit, another gang member asked why they were allowing a man with such winnings to leave. However, The leader reminded that Master Jing had called the physical teacher, so they could allow the young man to enjoy himself a little. The man was sure that Mr. Zhang would definitely return, and then they would make him pay. The former soldier was leaving an underground casino with a suitcase of money, and the guards noticed that he was leaving quite quickly. The young man took out a small amount and gave the bodyguards a tip as a token of gratitude for letting him in. The young guys were happy to receive a rather large amount, and Chung had fun with them. Mr. Zhang admitted that he was going to go frolic with the girls at KTV0. The guys didn't mind guiding the generous client to the right place and responded to Chung's request with enthusiasm. A well-known establishment in their circles was located very close by, which allowed the bodyguards to leave their workplace. On the way, the guys talked about how they often went to this place themselves to relax. There were many girls waiting for them inside, and the gang members allowed Mr. Zhang any beauty. The former soldier noted that they were all far from the goddesses of the school, but he needed to choose someone to get information. Ultimately, the young man chose a pretty lady in a yellow dress. The guards, overflowing with enthusiasm, allowed their new friend to have privacy with the beauty. An employee of the establishment approached Mr. Zhang and asked what he wanted from her. Cheng sat down on one of the sofas and called the girl behind him, offering her a little drink. First of all, the former soldier made sure that the bar was a safe environment. The young man asked the workers if anyone was coming who had not registered. The stranger admitted that they are owned by the gang, so they are always taken away during showdowns. Mr. Zhang sat closer in hopes of finding out how many girls there were working in this place. The lady said that there were more than 100 of them, and Chung began to worry about how many of them were being forced to do this. The time has come for the main question, because the soldier came to find out if the boss of the Tigers was in the bar. The employee confidentially reported that the man has his own room in which 8 girls play with her. After this, Mr. Zhang realized that he would not learn anything more and gave the lady a large tip. The happy worker remained in the room counting the money she had earned and asked the client to come again. The physical education teacher hurried to the school building because he knew that Mei would be waiting for him to go home. Miss Jiao wanted to know where her colleague went because she had not seen him in the office all day. The girl even thought that Chung had abandoned her, but the guy convinced her friend that he was just going to settle some matters. In addition, the former soldier said that he would have to return home, and the beauty wanted to go with him. The brown-haired woman again reminded that she was scared to stay alone at home, when bandits could appear at any moment. Mr. Zhang understood that she was right and wondered what they should do in this situation. In the end, he admitted that Mei could go with him if she was not afraid to meet his parents. Miss Jiao pouted and couldn't understand why she should meet her parents when she was going to visit a colleague. The former soldier decided that they could leave the brown-haired woman at the hotel while Chung went about his business. At this point, they began to leave the school grounds, and Mr. Zhang promised never to leave his girlfriend. The young man took Mei to a 5-star hotel in the middle of the city, which had good security. The physical education teacher led the girl to her room and asked his colleague not to go anywhere until he returned. Before leaving, Chung made sure that the teacher would call him in case of danger. The brown-haired girl watched her hero leave and thought about what he might really like. Towards evening, the former soldier was finally able to reach the Zhang family residence. The young man plucked up courage because he understood that he would have to tell his dad about the white tiger. As soon as Chung opened the door to his father's room, he heard his parents scolding his younger sister. The young lady listened as dad warned of punishment if the teacher called again. But as soon as she noticed her brother, she realized that she could save herself by telling her that he had not been home at night. The girl hurried out of the room, allowing her father to completely turn his attention to his son. The young man was betrayed by his own sister, since the man really immediately switched to Chung's personal life. The former soldier, with a sweet smile, asked the parent to talk about it later, citing an important matter. The young man hastened to report that he had encountered a gang, which he wanted to get rid of for the good of society. The father was ready to help with the case, although he did not understand why the guy did not simply write a statement to the police. Then the former soldier admitted that there was a traitor in law enforcement agencies. This news upset the man, and he wanted to know what his son was going to do. The physical education teacher asked to assign him special forces people so that no one would find out. In this way, Chung could again feel like an army man and feel like he was on an important mission. The next day, Mr. Zhang took Mei to the school and planned to share the good news with her. The guy promised that from now on, Miss Jiao need not be afraid of the Tiger Group. The physical education teacher admitted that he could not give details, but said that he would take care of the bandits today. The brown-haired woman asked her friend to be careful, and Chung promised to return by the end of the working day. The girl watched her hero and sincerely hoped that everything would be okay with him. At the same time, a small group of people from the White Tiger gang were watching the couple. Brother Huo watched the physical education teacher and couldn't believe that he alone dealt with 30 opponents. Mr. Jiang looked like an ordinary loser, and the man even thought that Jiu decided to make a joke on him. However, the boss's confidant promised that Chung was stronger than he seemed, so the group hurried after. The former soldier quickly noticed that a small crowd was moving behind him. Jiu and the others stayed behind, gloomily looking at the dangerous enemy. Mr. Huo took out a knife and confidently walked towards Chung, promising to make him regret getting involved with their gang. In response to this, the young man grinned, since no one from the group was good enough as an opponent for him. The man jumped up and ran to attack, wanting to test what the vaunted physical education teacher was capable of. Mr. Jiang prepared to fight, although he admitted that he didn't think the brunette would succeed. The former soldier attacked first, but Brother Ho managed to block. Moreover, the man stood up well against him, which earned him a little respect from Chung. Despite the fact that it was not so easy for the bandit to resist the teacher, he tried not to show it. Brother Ho raised his dagger again and rushed into battle, shouting that he would destroy the enemy. However, before the White Tiger gang member could get the blade close enough, he missed a blow to the body. The bladed weapon flew out of the brunette's hand, and he himself flew into the crowd of his guys. Mr. Jiang smiled smugly and asked if they really thought that he would let them go the second time. Ju excitedly grabbed onto Brother Huo, but the man wanted the others to attack Chung. The members of the group did not dare to disobey the commander and ran to the attack. The former soldier told them that they were all so weak that even together, they could not cause him any inconvenience. A fight began, in which everyone present took part at once, but this did not give them any particular advantage. A couple of minutes later, all of them were lying on the floor, having received wounds of varying severity, but no one could continue the fight. Cheng expressed his disappointment because the gangsters only needed a few light blows. However, this only played into Mr. Jiang's hands as the young man was in a hurry. He remembered that support should have arrived when suddenly a black minibus appeared next to them. The car stopped next to the physical education teacher and a man in uniform got out. Cheng glanced at the newly arrived men and realized that his assistants had finally appeared. A group of armed men formed a line and advanced on the members of the White Tiger group. Brother Huo was shocked by the appearance of the special forces and crawled back in fear. The detachment commander gave the order to his guys to arrest everyone who was lying on the floor. The special forces coped with the task quite quickly, and the first part of the gang was neutralized. Captain Ma appeared before the former soldier to await further instructions. The gym teacher saluted and ordered to keep an eye on the gangsters and not let any of them get away. Mr. Jiang's eyes flashed with anger as he thought that he would soon come for the White Tiger. The former soldier and his new team stopped near the gang's two main targets. Chang knew that the White Tiger would most often be in one of the places, so he suggested splitting up. The physical education teacher said that he would take care of the guard dogs so that the special forces could get inside the underground casino. At this time, the first team had to go to the KTV and arrest everyone who was wanted. The rest of the group had to follow Mr. Jiang to the casino. And since none of the soldiers had any questions, they hastened to begin the mission. The first to leave the minibus was Chung, who headed towards the familiar security guards of the gaming house. The guys cheerfully greeted their new friend, happy to see their generous client again. The physical education teacher lied that he liked to relax with them and asked to open the door for him. The guys listened and, without any questions or caution, turned to open the gate. However, as soon as this happened, their faces met the fists of the former soldier. Both guards immediately lost consciousness, and their bodies fell limply onto the road. Mr. Jiang then turned to the minibus and called on the special forces to follow him. The car door swung open, and one by one the armed men left the shelter. Their group consisted of 5 people, so they were able to quickly get to the right place without being noticed. Cheng ordered 3 guys to go through the emergency entrance, and the rest to monitor the emergency one. Before the mission began, the former soldier recalled that their main goal was to catch all members of the gang, especially the boss. The first group did a great job, but one guy managed to elude them. The young man hurried to the boss's room to report that special forces had broken into their place. The leader approached the young man with concern, not understanding why the mole did not inform them about this. However, there was no time to talk, so the White Tiger hurried deeper into the corridor. He called the young follower along so that they could escape together through a secret tunnel. The boss moved the painting from its place, and a small cabinet moved to the side, opening the way to salvation for the bandits. At this time, the remaining members of the group were already handcuffed and carefully controlled by soldiers. Mr. Zhang actively looked around but could not find the boss. He began to suspect that the man might have escaped, so he ran to investigate the bar. Soon, the young man discovered a secret tunnel and realized that the leader of the group was really lucky. Captain Ma found the former soldier and reported that they had cordoned off the perimeter just in case. Cheng was angry and upset because their mission was only half completed due to the tiger's escape. The captain tried to convince the teacher that things weren't so bad since they had eliminated his entire gang. The young man was filled with the desire to catch the tiger as quickly as possible to put an end to the mission. Ma promised to tell the top about what happened in order to take all necessary measures to capture the leader. Despite his disappointment, Chung was glad that the threat from the group had disappeared. The young man was able to get to school only late in the evening, when the working day had long come to an end. There he was met by Mei, who thought that they would go to the hotel again, but the guy told her that there was no need to be afraid anymore. The girl became alarmed, not understanding what was happening, and reminded that the gang knew where her house was. The former soldier understood the beauty's fears, but promised that the gangsters would not bother her anymore. The physical education teacher said that the white tiger was eliminated, and from now on Mei can live without fear. The brown-haired woman found it difficult to believe the fact that someone managed to eliminate a powerful gang. Mr. Zhang smiled broadly at his friend and did not tell the details of this matter. However, he agreed to take the teacher home and offered to check his words on the internet. The goddess immediately took out her phone and began looking for information about the criminal group. The first article gave her information that special forces had eliminated the largest gang in the city. Mrs. Jiao was shocked by this news and could barely comprehend the truth of what was happening. She felt confused and suspected that it was Chung who was involved in the collapse of the huge gang. Then the physical education teacher admitted that he had previously worked in the army, which allowed him to easily deal with such troubles. Mei accepted this, although she was alarmed by how quickly the young man managed to destroy the bandits. Mr. Zhang again reminded that the brown-haired woman could put aside her worries and return home. However, the goddess was still worried that the leader was free and wanted the young man to take her home. The former soldier did not refuse the teacher, and they began another walk together. By the time the couple reached the desired high-rise building, it was already dark around. Chang stopped in his usual place and was about to leave with a sense of accomplishment. Mayer didn't even have time to really understand what was happening when the teacher was already out of sight. The goddess did not understand why the young man never took the initiative to stay, and this angered her. Soon, Mr. Zhang reached his home, noticing that the light was on in his father's office. When Cheng walked inside, he heard him laugh and hoped that he could get him to return to the army. The joyful man came out to his son and told him that they had found drugs in the White Tiger's hideout. The former soldier asked hopefully if he could return to duty as a reward. However, Dad reminded him that he must first carry out his grandfather's orders. The physical education teacher dejectedly thought that starting a family was much more difficult than destroying a gang. At this time, at the other end of the city, the leader of the White Tiger returned to the place where their possessions were previously located. The man did not understand why such a dangerous place had been chosen for the meeting, and turned around in fear when he heard his nickname. The leader rushed to meet Boss Sky and begged him to help him get out of trouble. The gangster looked menacingly at his subordinate and wanted to know where the thing that was entrusted to the tiger was. The fat man panicked and admitted that he gave it to Ho, but he was captured, as was the hiding place. Boss Sky received confirmation that the things were lost and no longer listened to the leader's pleas. His face showed pure anger as the bandit wanted to know why the special forces came into their domain. Around the former underground casino, it was dark and quiet. Only the gangsters discussed their business. The leader of the White Tiger admitted that he knew nothing about the special forces and did not even have time to see them because he was trying to escape. Mr. Sky was convinced that when the fat man ran away, he left no traces behind. Tiger tried to convince his ally to help him get everything back, despite the fact that the police were on his tail. The leader reminded Sky that if he was caught, his ally might also be in trouble. It turned out that this is why the man came to the meeting, because he was not going to let the cops get to the tiger. Boss Sky admitted that he doesn't want any trouble, so he'll fix it before it happens. Subordinates grabbed the struggling man, and the authority ordered to make it appear as if he had hanged himself. The tiger desperately struggled and begged Sky to take pity on him and offer help instead of death. The next day, it was time for classes and the teachers returned to the school grounds. The first person Chung met was Mei, who happily informed her friend that the tiger was dead. The former soldier was surprised because he was sure that the leader would never do such a thing. This made him think that the boss had been helped to die, but he did not tell Miss Jiao about it. The young man noticed that now the girl need not worry about her safety, but something told him that she wanted to continue walking with him. However, Mei recalled that it was the physical education teacher who destroyed the gang and became her personal superhero. The former soldier agreed that he did not risk his life for a simple thank you. The beauty asked what Chung wanted, and the guy hinted that he deserved practical lessons. The goddess looked at the young man with interest, which confused him, because he did not understand what was wrong. The brown-haired woman did not answer. Instead, she pressed herself close to the teacher, saying that she could not thank the savior in any way. After that, she stood up on her tiptoes and, overcoming her own embarrassment, kissed Mr. Zhang on the cheek. The girl looked at Chung with her most trusting gaze and invited him to accept such a reward. The physical education teacher did not have time to respond to this, as the embarrassed Mei hurried to run away. But a slight smile appeared on the former soldier's face, and he thought that Zhao smelled nice. That evening, the young man met his parents in the living room to discuss the news of the tiger's death. The father agreed that someone had helped the leader die, but suggested waiting until the culprits made a mistake. Their conversation was interrupted by their mother, who suggested they talk about business, not dead people. In the end, the two of them were interested in how their son was doing in order to make his grandfather happy. The woman told Chung that all girls like sweet talk and romance. The blonde was worried that over the years of service, the guy had completely forgotten how to care for the opposite sex. The father saw his son's doubts, but he confidentially suggested that he just let his mother take care of everything. The former soldier sighed heavily, realizing that if the woman intervened, then everything would not be so simple. The next day, the director decided to begin implementing her brilliant plan. The first thing Chung's mother did was find Ms. Zhao on the Tainai school grounds and get her attention. The principal said that she had heard rumors that Mei and the gym teacher were quite close. At this time, the brown-haired woman felt as if she was talking to a parent worried about her child. The woman noticed the teacher's excitement and hastened to calm her down, attributing her questions to curiosity. The goddess of the school said that it all started with Mr. Jiang helping her deal with her troubles. The headmistress promised that she was not going to scold Mei for the gossip, admitting that she would be glad if it turned out to be true. The blonde began to actively praise her son as a faithful, strong partner. Cheng's mother tried to convince Miss Jiao that a man with such qualities should not be missed, and this made the goddess ask about Jiang's family and annoyedly remark that he was not telling her anything. Ma'am wasn't going to give away the former soldier's secrets, so she assured the lady that he definitely didn't have a girlfriend. In addition, she told Mayer that the physical education teacher does not know how to communicate with ladies at all. On this note, the headmistress ended the conversation, allowing the brown-haired woman to think about all her words. A little later that day, it was the next contender's turn to discuss a partnership with her son. Jingwen appeared in the office because she was informed that the school principal had called her to her place. The blonde asked Miss Huo to sit down and asked how teacher Zhang usually behaved. The girl became embarrassed and began to say that the guy was very nice, capable, and handsome. The woman asked if Jingwei liked him, which made the teacher try to pull herself together. Cheng's mother gently pointed out that it was Miss Huo who was in the same office as Zhang, but he was close to Mei. One of the goddesses became noticeably sad, but admitted that her colleagues would make a pretty good couple. The director decided to encourage Jingwen to also compete for the attention of the former soldier. The blonde reminded that it was Miss Huo who had more advantages since they were in the same office. The woman suggested that the brunette invite the physical education teacher to the holiday and try to get closer. Confused, Jingwen thought about it seriously, although she was surprised that the director only called her to talk about it. Cheng's mother smiled softly and lied that she just thought they would be a good couple. One of the goddesses promised to think about the director's proposal and left the office. As soon as the girl left the premises, the woman called her secretary. Thus soon, Mrs. Cho came to her, who was also confused by the question about Zhang. Next came her turn to talk with Fiona to encourage the goddesses to take action. The school day flew by at such a pace, and by the end of working hours, the blonde managed to complete her plans. Cheng's mother stretched wearily at her desk, glad that she had spoken with the four goddesses. The woman was confident that her contribution would result in success and now believed that her son would definitely succeed. The end of the working day was approaching, and the physical education teacher walked to his office along the empty corridors. The former soldier was happy that classes were over and planned to go home as soon as possible. In the office, the young man came across Miss Ho and noticed that she was clearly thinking about something since she did not notice his appearance. The brunette turned to the guy in fear and hurried to ask if he was busy this Sunday. Mr. Zhang didn't have time to answer anything when Mei suddenly appeared in their office. One of the goddesses smiled brightly and said that she wanted to invite Chung to dinner to thank him for his help. Ms. Jiao also wanted to meet this coming weekend, which put the teacher in an awkward situation. The physical education teacher turned to Miss Ho to find out why she was asking about his plans for Sunday. Jingwen plucked up her courage and admitted that she was planning to treat her colleague to dinner. The brunette recalled that she had asked first, and Chen found himself between two fires, not knowing what to do correctly. In the end, the man closed his eyes sadly, realizing that one of the girls would be offended in any case. While the young man was thinking about what to do, another goddess appeared in the office. Ms. Cho became a ray of hope for Mr. Zhang, allowing the former soldier to dream of a change of subject. However, Sim also invited the gym teacher to go to dinner that weekend. The girl's proposal outraged the other two goddesses, who replied that the guy was already taken. However, Teacher Cho did not pay attention to their words and waited for Mr. Jiang to answer her question himself. This sparked a dispute between the teachers over who Chung should go out to dinner with over the weekend. Sim smiled brightly and reminded them that they should listen to what their colleague wanted. The situation in the office began to heat up, and none of the ladies was going to give up. The physical education teacher began to suspect that the girls had specifically agreed to come to him together with an invitation to dinner. At this moment, the door to the office began to open again, letting another guest into the room. This time it was Fiona, who embarrassedly called Mr. Zhang to tell him something. Cheng looked uncertainly at the fourth girl, fearfully wondering what she wanted from him. The goddess was no exception and also invited the former soldier to go to dinner with her. The physical education teacher stopped understanding what was happening and panicked, not understanding what to do. Fiona noticed the sidelong glances of the other goddesses and asked what was the matter. So she found out that they were all going to dinner with a colleague that weekend. However, instead of starting to argue over who would get Chung, she suggested that everyone go together. Fiona smiled charmingly, wondering if there were any objections, and the goddesses felt that they had to agree. The girl winked at the assembled company and easily concluded that they were waiting for a walk together. Mr. Zhang couldn't believe that the teachers agreed, but he was grateful to Fiona for resolving the situation. The former soldier officially settled on this option, which satisfied everyone in the room. So they quickly decided that they would meet at the school gates on Sunday. When the appointed time arrived, Chung walked towards the school, thinking about why the girls did this. At the gate, the young man noticed 4 beauties and for a second was speechless with delight. The goddesses of the Tanaya school smiled happily at the physical education teacher and looked simply stunning. Mr. Zhang hurried to tell the lady about this and then asked where they were going. The women said that they decided to go shopping first, and the former soldier did not argue with them. The friends chatted happily in front, leaving Chung confused and trying to figure out when they got along so well. Soon, the company reached the city center, where there were a huge number of boutiques. The teachers were enjoying their shopping while the still clueless Mr. Jiang carried their bags. The goddesses paid almost no attention to the young man, and he began to worry that he would become a bag hanger. However, the young man did not express his dissatisfaction with the ladies and patiently endured the rest of the shopping trip. So they finally got to the dinner part where the ladies continued to have fun. They happily discussed various dishes and together tried new items recommended to each other. After the meal was finished, Chung decided to ask if they could go home. Fiona turned to Mr. Jiang and admitted that they would like to hang out a little more. The friends started discussing that they wanted to go to KTV and didn't even ask what their companion thought about it. By this time, it was already quite dark outside and the karaoke bar was popular. However, the guys managed to occupy the room, but Fiona decided that just singing was boring. This prompted the girls to suggest they all play spin the bottle together to have some fun. Mai offered to play for tasks, but asked to play honestly and follow the rules. Everyone agreed to the demands made, and Fiona was the first to take the glass bottle. Tara spun around on the table, forcing the other players to closely monitor her movements. The neck of the container pointed to Cho Shim, so she had the opportunity to ask any of them to complete the task. The goddess did not hesitate for long and turned to Mr. Zhang, who was surprised by this turn of events. The teacher noticed that Chung was the only male in the group, so he was chosen. Sim playfully winked at the young man and ordered him to pretend to be an elephant and spin around 10 times. The physical education teacher was embarrassed and didn't really want to expose himself to ridicule surrounded by lovely ladies. But Mrs. Cho insisted on following the rules of the game and cheerfully hurried the former soldier. Mr. Jai had no choice, so he held his nose, extended his hand, and began to spin around. However, as soon as the young man finished, he solemnly declared that it was his turn. The suspicious joy in Chung's voice made the ladies worry, but they agreed to continue the game. The physical education teacher took the bottle and was going to use his tricks to take revenge for the fact that they dared to joke about him. The evening turned into night, and the guys continued to have fun in the KTV bar, enjoying the evening. The game of spin the bottle continued, and the glass container quickly changed its direction. Mr. Zhang barely touched the surface of the table so as not to attract the attention of the girls. The neck pointed at him, and the young man grinned, glad that his plan of tilting the table had worked. Cheng pretended to think about who to choose, but the first victim had to be Cho Shim. The teacher was outraged that she was chosen and wanted to know the reason for this action. The former soldier laughed and reminded him that the young lady herself had given him the task a couple of minutes ago. Mr. Zhang didn't come up with anything complicated, so Sim was obliged to pretend to be an elephant and spin around. Mayer reached for the bottle and promised that Chung would not be lucky this time. The glass container spun in the center of the table, causing all the participants in the game to freeze in anticipation. The former soldier used his trick again and made the neck of the bottle stop in his direction. The four goddesses looked at what was happening doubtfully, not understanding how this was possible. Cheng tried to hide his excitement and decided to shift the topic to the one who would have to complete the task. The second victim was Ms. Jiao, because she was the one who twirled the bottle. A marker appeared in the former soldier's hand, and it was decided to draw the lady a cat's face. Mayer humbly put her face up and allowed her colleague to draw mustaches on her people. The brown-haired woman promised to pay off Mr. Zhang, but he was confident in his subsequent success. From that moment on, several more rounds passed, and the girls did not understand how the physical trainer managed to win. By the end of the game, all the goddesses had cat whiskers painted on their faces, and they looked at Chung with interest. After a while, the young man got up from his evening and suggested stopping there because he was tired of drawing. The irritated girls agreed, but promised that they would still make Mr. Jiang pay. Before leaving, the former soldier advised the ladies to clean up and get ready to go home. By this point, the area around the bar was quite noisy, and many guests were leaving the establishment. However, an expensive black car stopped next to the KTV, and a group of guys got out. Boss Song and his henchmen hoped to find beautiful girls at the bar and spend the evening with them. Just at this moment, the young people caught the eye of the four goddesses of the Tenaya school. The guys decided that they wanted to get them into their company, so they headed towards the ladies. Boss Song smirked at the beauties and offered to go with him so he could buy the lady a drink. The former soldier quickly realized that he would have to deal with the impudent people, so he asked the girls to hide behind him. The young man saw no problem, continuing to advance and insist on the company of the goddesses. Mr. Zhang covered for his companions and advised Sun to leave if he did not want any trouble. The young boss's minions watched with mockery the man who dared to mind his own business. The impudent young man did not want to quarrel, so he simply suggested that Chung take a couple of hundred and go about his business. The physical education teacher was not going to accept the offer and defiantly asked what would happen if he did not do this. A group of guys did not understand why the stranger was refusing money and blocking their path. Song threatened Mr. Zhang, offering to resolve the issue peacefully for the last time. However, Chung was already in the mood for a fight and felt that he had to show the young man how to spend his time correctly. The former soldier took a step forward and in one swift movement grabbed his opponent by the neck. The young boss was locked in the grip and cried that he was in pain, but this did not evoke sympathy from Chung. Sun's henchmen got angry and rushed to the rescue of the leader, demanding the release of their brother. The physical education teacher actually let the insolent one go, but at the same time kicked him back hard. The young man flew back, knocking down with his body those who ran to his aid. The four goddesses were delighted with their colleagues' actions, and Mr. Zhang allowed them to enjoy the show. The first to come to her senses was Fiona, who cried out in concern, warning of the threat. The former soldier saw that the Troika decided to attack him from behind, so he did not stand on ceremony with them. Sun was the closest to the others, so he was the first to receive a well-deserved elbow strike. The young boss lost his balance and fell to the floor again, getting tangled up in the legs of his assistants. However, this did not become a problem as Chung neutralized the blonde immediately after. And finally, he dealt a strong blow to the last of the group, saying that he could always fulfill their desire to be beaten. The goddesses watched with interest, and Mei-er especially enjoyed watching the bullies fly away. The boys' bodies were covered with bruises, and they could no longer continue the fight. Sun promised that they would take revenge on the physical education teacher, after which he called on his guys to escape. Ms. Jiao began to worry, but the former soldier asked the girls not to think about empty threats. The young man sent the goddesses home, and the next day they, as if nothing had happened, came to school. Mr. Zhang met a brunette who accused the teacher of playing unfairly yesterday. Jingwen couldn't say exactly how Chung did it, but she was sure that her colleague was cheating. The former soldier looked away and spoke nervously about how nice the weather was around them. This behavior was confirmed by Miss Ho's guesses, although the physical education teacher himself refused to talk directly about the deception. One of the goddesses was angry because of the deception and said that now they simply must take revenge. The young man felt uncomfortable and tried to persuade the girl not to get angry in the middle of the school corridor. However, Jingwen had no intention of letting Mr. Zhang go unpunished. Chang watched the lady leave and tried to understand where she was in such a hurry early in the morning. At this time, the brunette was heading to Madame Zhao's office to tell the news. There she found the other goddesses, who were glad to see their friend, although they were wondering why she had come. Jingwen did not delay important information and admitted to the girls that Chung was cheating. It turned out that the teachers had gathered together because they were also worried that Zhang had cheated. The girls looked at each other enthusiastically and began to discuss how they could take revenge on the liar. Miss Huo was startled, but quickly became a participant in the discussion of their plan. Cho and Mei believed that they had a duty to carry out sisterly revenge in retribution for the bullying. The brunette winked at her friends and suggested they sneak into the office and kick the physical teacher's ass. Fiona recalled how easily Chung dealt with yesterday's bullies. Madame Jiao sadly remembered that they were too weak for this, but she still wanted to punish the guy. Jingwen grinned and reminded the naive ladies of the existence of chili water. Miss Huo reminded them that they didn't have to fight Mr. Zhang face to face. The goddesses became inspired and remembered that they could use pepper spray and an electric baton. The brown-haired woman moved on to the last part of the plan, asking how they could lure Chung out. Jingwen was determined to detain the young man after school and release him when there was no one left. At this time, on the other side of the city, in one of the high-rise buildings, teachers were also discussing. The people of Sky managed to find out who was behind the fall of the White Tiger Gang, and they came to tell about it. One of the subordinates reported how Jiang Chung became the one who protected his colleague and taught him a lesson as a gangster. The boss lit a cigar and thought with interest that an ordinary teacher could play with a white tiger. The henchman suggested that the Special Forces group might also have something to do with Chung. They weren't able to dig up any details about the teacher's past, but Sky didn't think it was important. The boss ordered his men to destroy the threat that evening, unaware that he was not alone. At the same time, Boss Song learned that his subordinates had hired a detective to find out about the teacher. The young man was delighted to learn that his opponent was nothing, although he dared to contact him. The interlocutor was also filled with enthusiasm when he expected to hear how they would make the impudent person regret his actions. Song decided that it was worth hiring stronger people and sending them to beat Chung. The subordinate asked that the task be left to him, and they both looked forward to the upcoming evening. The physical education teacher's working day is over, and it's time to get ready to go home. The former soldier constantly felt goosebumps running through his skin and tried to understand who was offended by him. Before the young man could leave the school grounds, Miss Huo ran up to him. Teacher Zhang asked what was the matter, because he was already getting ready to go home. The brunette handed her colleague a folder with documents and asked him to help her sort them out. The man had no intention of refusing one of the goddesses, and Jingwen was glad that their plan was working. The couple sat in the office until night fell, and there were no witnesses around. Miss Huo looked at the time and thought that there should be no one left in the building. In addition, her accomplices should have been ready by now, so the girl offered to finish the job later. The ex-soldier was annoyed when he realized that they had been sitting up late for nothing since the task was not urgent. Jingwen persuaded the young man not to be angry and actively pushed him out the door. As soon as they left the school building, the brunette offered to treat her colleague to a drink as a thank you. Mr. Zhang saw no reason to refuse the treat, so he accepted the offer. Miss Huo left the gym teacher for a moment and returned with a bottle in her hands. King noticed that the girl was watching him closely, but the lady brushed aside his suspicions. The former soldier raised the neck to his mouth and prepared to drink the gifted drink. Jingwen had a smug smile on her face as she realized that her ploy had worked. The next moment, the physical education teacher's face turned red, and the remaining water was poured onto the floor. The young man looked at the bottle in shock and, trying to catch his breath, asked why the water was so peppery. Miss Huo laughed lightly at her colleague and admitted that she made chili water especially for the deceiver, after which she turned away and called for the sisters to join and look at Chung's expression. The four goddesses of Tenai School appeared in the courtyard with evil smiles and additional materials. The former soldier panicked, not understanding what these ladies were up to, so he began to slowly retreat. However, Jingwen did not allow this to happen and gave the order to use the flour. Her friends opened the bags they were holding in their hands and reached for the white powder. The ladies surrounded their offender and, laughing joyfully, began to throw flour at him. Mr. Jiang did not particularly resist. Although he was alarmed by this turn of events, the goddesses remembered the next stage and pepper spray began to appear in their hands. The former soldier began to suspect that the ladies were planning to kill him as his colleagues slowly approached. The physical education teacher guessed that the girls had planned everything in advance, so he said that he would deal with them. The man did not wait for the attack and was the first to rush forward, extending his hand. This helped him grab the wrist of one of the goddesses and make her drop the pepper spray. Jingwen was captured, so she ordered the girls to use the baton. Mayor rushed to attack, despite the fact that Mr. Jiang tried to reason with them. The former soldier felt movement behind him, realizing that Lady Jiao wanted to take him by surprise. Thanks to his quick reaction, the physical education teacher was able to dodge, causing the girl to lose her balance. The club was taken away and thrown to the floor, and Cheng called on the goddesses to show what else they were capable of. However, before the girls took the next step, Mr. Jiang sensed another presence. He turned towards the road and saw that two gangs of unfamiliar gangs were carefully watching them. Their appearance meant a new danger, but this time not only for Chung but also for the girls. The young man instantly changed and ordered his colleagues to stop and hide behind him. Fiona took a closer look at one of the gangs and recognized them as the guys whom the physical education teacher had beaten on Sunday. Both groups slowly approached the teachers, who were in no hurry to make contact with them. Song's men suspected that the group opposite them were Mr. Jiang's men and were wondering whether to fight them. At this time, Sky's subordinates also believed that the gang opposite them were Chung's six. The former soldier noticed that neither group was attacking and began to suspect that they did not know each other. The young man was well aware that this fact could play into their hands, so he squeezed the bag of flour tighter. The gym teacher quietly announced that it was time to put on a good show between the bad guys. Mr. Jiang stepped forward and shouted, ordering the brothers to attack, shocking his colleagues. But the gang under the control of Boss Sun immediately took off and rushed to attack. People from Sky's gang, in turn, also rushed to attack, wanting to get a reward. At this time, Chung began throwing flour out of the bag to create an impromptu smokescreen. The man took advantage of the poor visibility and ran forward, asking the girls to follow him. There was chaos in the schoolyard as factions fought furiously against each other. Thanks to this, none of the participants in the battle noticed that their main target had disappeared from the spot. The girls admired how the former soldier got out of the situation, although they considered the enemies stupid. The goddesses planned to go home, but Chung reminded them that they were not done sorting things out. Meyer noted offendedly that they were just making fun of him in response to cheating. However, an ominous smile appeared on Mr. Jiang's face and he said that he was also going to take revenge. Ms. Zhao was very scared and began to cry, not understanding why their colleague was so angry. The rest of the goddesses ran to calm their friend down and became angry at the former soldier for his behavior. Cheng smiled awkwardly and admitted that he was just joking, trying to cheer them up. However, Jingwen stated that it was not funny for them, especially when they barely got out of trouble. The sisters left Mr. Jiang alone without waiting for him to pull his next trick. The goddesses of the Tenai school, with their heads held high, retreated to safety. At this time, the former soldier watched their backs and realized that he had really angered the ladies. In an attempt to somehow rectify the situation, he reached out to them and asked for forgiveness. The girls just snorted at this, but allowed themselves to be put into a taxi, although they left without Chung. The physical education teacher hesitated, thinking that it would not be easy to complete grandfather's task. However, first, Mr. Jiang had to deal with the rich man's son and check whose gang came for him. The teachers returned to school early in the morning while the hallways were fairly deserted. Almost immediately, the former soldier met Jingwen in the hallway and wanted to know if she was angry with him. The girl was surprised that the young man remembered yesterday, and then Chung said that girls, like idiots, are difficult to deal with. The brunette was hooked on this statement and asked who Mr. Jiang was calling stupid. The physical education teacher instantly realized his mistake and assured that he meant himself. In the end, the man asked Miss Huo not to be angry with him, and the girl let the situation go. Before leaving, the brunette advised her colleague to be careful, reminding him that serious people had come for him yesterday. And although Jingwen knew that Chung was strong, she was worried that the bandits might play dirty. On this rather amicable note, they parted ways so that the goddess could begin conducting classes. But the young man was going to go to KTV to try to find a rich child. It didn't take Mr. Zhang long to get to the right place. As soon as the guy walked inside, he could clearly see an unfamiliar brown-haired man following him. The man decided to teach a lesson to the one who dared to follow him, so he turned to the toilet. The unknown person hurried forward to also get into a secluded room. However, to the young man's surprise, Mr. Zhang was waiting for him inside and immediately demanded to answer questions. Chang wanted to know who was watching him and why, but the unknown person began to pretend that he had simply gone to the restroom. The former soldier was not in the mood for long conversations, so he was going to solve the problem with his fists. The brown-haired man did not have time to react and received a rather strong blow to the face. The unknown person fell to the floor and was thrown back several meters, demonstrating Jiang's strength. The young man sat down and admitted that he understood everything, although the former soldier believed that he should have confessed right away and saved himself the pain. The physical education teacher wanted to finish the surveillance as quickly as possible, so he reached for the unknown. The young man then admitted that he was hired by Mr. Song as a private detective. Brown said that his employer is the son of the CEO of Sun Holdings. Mr. Zhang was ready to let the detective go if he gave Sun's contact information and told him where he most often goes. Without much thought, the private detective handed over his boss's business card to save himself the trouble. Brown also talked about a black boxing gym where he went to recruit new people. The massage parlor housed an underground boxing venue that the rich frequented for bets and excitement. Mr. Zhang allowed the detective to go, ordering him not to talk to him if they saw each other again. The young man hurried to run away, thinking that he was not paid enough for such a difficult task. Left alone with himself, the teacher took out his phone and began dialing Sun's number. The boy picked up the phone and, without knowing who was calling him, reported his location. Thus, the former soldier learned that his goal was to be in the Nanho massage parlor. Mr. Zhang walked toward the exit of the KTV, surprised at how easy it was to find out the information he needed. As soon as the physical education teacher received the necessary data, he hung up and did not answer young Sun's questions. The young man clicked something on his mobile phone in surprise, not understanding who called him and why. Brother Guy asked what was the matter and promised that he would protect the client from the person who called. The young man admitted that he stops worrying about dangers when he is around a boxer. After this, the rich man's son spoke about a teacher who should not be underestimated because he is stronger than he looks. However, the gang member assured that he, as a participant in black boxing, is stronger than any hired workers. Young Song admitted that he would like to see the pathetic teacher's arm broken as retribution. Brother Guy considered this task too simple and promised that it would not take much time. The rich man's son was ready to give any money and even pay more after the job was done. The boxer laughed and offered to break Mr. Zhang's leg as a bonus. At this point, Chung reached the massage parlor and told the receptionist that he was friends with Mr. Song. Without any further questions, the girl began to lead the new guy into Brother Guy's office. The worker opened the door and told the rich man's son that a friend had come to see him. The former soldier walked into the room and admitted that he was glad to finally find young Sun. The guys jumped up from their seats while Chung said that he had found the gentleman with the help of a detective. However, the rich man's son was not afraid because there was a man next to him who promised to take revenge on the man in front of them. Brother Guy stood up and promised the gym teacher that he would not let him escape. The former soldier did not take the weakling's words seriously, which greatly angered the boxer. A member of the Nanho gang rushed forward to teach the insolent a lesson, but Chung managed to dodge. Some of the blows almost caught the flawless soldier, earning the man his praise. Brother Guy swung again, intending to put an end to their short fight. This time, Mr. Zhang put up a block and began to move closer to his opponent. The physical education teacher shielded himself from all blows, allowing himself to evaluate the boxer's strength. Eventually, he got tired of taking weak blows, and Chung decided that it was his turn. In a matter of seconds, the former soldier was able to grab Brother Guy's hand. The gang member felt a tight grip on his fist and began to panic. Teacher Zhang began to bend someone else's arm and reminded him that just recently a boxer wanted to break his arm. The next moment, the former soldier struck with his elbow, breaking Brother Guy's bone. After this, the man threw the gang member's body over his shoulder, taking advantage of the enemy's vulnerability. Chang launched the boxer through the door, which broke under Mr. Guy's weight and flew out into the corridor. The fighter was finished, so the former soldier turned to Sun, remembering that he wanted to break his leg. The rich man's son retreated in fear and promised that he would never dare to contact the teacher again. However, Mr. Zhang was not naive, so he understood that the young boss's words were worthless. Then the young guy tried to take advantage of the fact that they were in Nanho territory. However, Little things like this were never something that could stop Chung's plans. So the man kicked boss Sun, admitting that he was scared by such things. The guys were in one of the offices on the second floor of a fake massage parlor. The teacher slowly approached the gentleman and admitted that he was going to teach him a couple of lessons. The young man trembled with fear and begged not to beat him, and was ready to pay any money admitting his guilt. However, at that moment, members of the Manhwa gang appeared in the broken doorway. One of them demanded to introduce himself to the one who dared to organize a showdown on their territory. But Mr. Zhang was not going to say his name, just wanting to teach Boss Song a lesson. The rich man's son saw in Brother Feng an opportunity to escape Chung's revenge, so he begged for help. However, the gang member didn't care what was happening with them, as long as it wasn't on the territory of the massage parlor. Mr. Song decided that Nanho was on his side, so he shouted for the former soldier to leave. Mr. Zhang didn't even blink an eye, irritably reminding him that the young man owed him his leg. The next moment, Chung kicked someone else's limb, causing the boy to scream in pain. Brother Feng was outraged that they did not listen to him, and the teacher, in turn, did not understand why he should do this. A member of the Nanho gang got angry and decided to teach the stupid insolent a lesson, finishing him off right in the room. The former soldier mocked Feng, although he admitted that he was quite good at making threats. The man angrily urged the rest of the gang to attack Chung and kill him. The gangsters took out their weapons and charged at the unimpressed Mr. Zhang. Using his impeccable close combat skills, the physical education teacher easily dealt with the gang members. One by one they took flight, unable to resist the former soldier. Brother Feng recognized the strength of the enemy and decided that he should deal with the insolent person himself. The man moved forward, but Chung dodged his blow without much difficulty. The next moment, the leader of the small group also suffered a strong blow to the face. Mr. Zhang towered over the gang members and reminded that he came for personal purposes, but he could always deal with Nanhuo. After that, the physical education teacher headed towards the exit of the massage parlor. Brother Feng tried to rise to his feet as he watched his opponents retreating back. However, Cheng was glad that everything turned out this way, because he was able to stretch his muscles a little. The rest of the gang suggested calling more people, but Feng knew it would be useless. Instead, the young man ordered to call his boss, confident that only he would be able to deal with Zhang. Everyone who belonged to Nanho wanted to take revenge on him for daring to contact them. Several days had passed since the incident, and the former soldier was at school as usual. Teacher Zhang was worried about the quiet behavior of the two gangs that he had managed to anger. However, the physical education teacher decided not to think about it too much, especially when he saw Fiona. The goddess smiled softly at her friend, who greeted her and asked if she was angry with him. One of the goddesses remembered their last meeting and irritably ordered not to disturb her. Then the young man admitted his guilt and, as an apology, offered to take Fiona to dinner. The teacher did not want to go because the invitation did not sound sincere. Then Chung said that he would call Sim. The former soldier told the girl that he would go and invite Mrs. Cho to dinner. The goddess screamed, ordering him to stop, and said that she would go, since the young man promised to pay. Mr. Zhang hinted that he knew the real reason for her agreement, but Fiona vehemently denied being jealous. The man allowed himself to enjoy the beauty's reaction a little, reminding him that he could have dinner with someone else. However, his friend aggressively assured him that he could have dinner with whomever he wanted. They eventually went to the establishment, and Fiona promised that she would empty Chung's wallet. The couple took a table at a rather expensive place for a teacher's salary, and the girl asked if Zhang felt slighted. The former soldier could have spent much more, but decided that it was worth playing along with his colleague. He lied that Miss Fiona taught him a lesson and left him penniless. The girl was not touched by this, and she recalled that just recently Chung mocked her on KTV. The physical education teacher laughed awkwardly and called his companion demanding, admitting that it would not be easy to support her. This judgment outraged the lady, and she shouted that she was not a gold digger and was generally an expert in financial management. Miss Fiona turned away from her friend irritably and said that she still forgives him, thanks to this invitation. However, she noted that his judgment of her only made her merge even more. Mr. Zhang was genuinely upset and asked his girlfriend not to be sad. This statement caused another wave of anger, and Fiona demanded that her colleague stop talking nonsense, although in fact her heart skipped a beat when she heard that Chung wanted to ask her out. They didn't have time to finish this conversation because the waiter appeared next to them. He placed the dishes on the table, allowing the ex-soldier to change the subject to food, to Fiona's disappointment. That's why she decided to take the initiative and ask if Jiang really wanted them to become a couple. The physical education teacher said that he really thought the girl was beautiful and would like to be with her. Once again, they were interrupted, but this time the rest of the goddesses appeared behind them. The sisters were unhappy that the teacher went to dinner with Mr. Jong alone. Miss Fiona came out to meet the girl, nervously asking how they ended up in this place. The sisters recalled that their friend herself told them about him, and the goddesses decided that they would all sit together. Thus, the former soldier had to agree to change his place and sit on the side. Fiona allowed the others to order whatever they wanted, explaining that this was Chung's way of apologizing for the bullying. Mr. Jong confirmed her words, hoping that the girls would forgive him thanks to the delicious food. Cho Sim stated that his fate should depend on the goddess he extinguished in the first place. Miss Fiona smiled shyly and promised to think about it, looking at the future results. The physical education teacher promised that next time he would apologize 100 times better. This melted the girls' hearts, and they decided it was worth celebrating with alcohol. Mr. Zhang didn't mind paying for the beer if it meant his girlfriends were having a good time. A joyful atmosphere reigned at the table, and the guys celebrated the reunion with alcohol. The teachers clinked glasses and happily drank beer while enjoying a delicious lunch. Thus, they did not even notice how they managed to empty 6 bottles. Mei and Fiona were more affected by alcohol, so they fell asleep right on the table. Jingwen was furious, thinking that they shouldn't have been allowed to drink so much considering they were supposed to be teaching classes. Mr. Zhang tried to calm the girl down, promising that he would take the ladies home. The 3 goddesses followed Chung, and Miss Huo was forced to return to school. The former soldier decided to take the drunken ladies to Ms. Jiao's apartment because he knew exactly where she was. Cho Sim helped the guy put her friends on the sofa, and it was decided to wait until they came to their senses. The man asked the teacher to look after the goddesses so that he could do something for them. Soon, Mr. Jiang returned with 3 bowls of sobering soup. One of the goddesses was surprised that her colleague was able to cook something so quickly and on his own. In fact, Sim was fascinated by Chung's ability, but wisely decided not to tell him about it. Moreover, she noticed that the physical education teacher was too familiar with Mei Er's house. The young man felt that he had made a mistake and a little nervously admitted that there was a long story behind this. Fortunately, he had a bowl of healthy soup at hand with which he distracted Sim, and while the girl ate on her own, he hurried to go to the 2 goddesses requiring help. On this day, I finally had a meeting with the boss at the fake Manhwa massage parlor. Brother Feng introduced Mr. Song to the leader, who paid them but was beaten. Boss Manhwa was outraged that someone dared to go on a rampage in their territory and escape unharmed. The ward excitedly talked about how good the former soldier was and admitted that they themselves could not have dealt with him. The man couldn't believe that an ordinary guy could be so strong. The rich man's son intervened in the conversation, saying that, according to research, Jiang was an ordinary teacher. After this, the young man took out a suitcase with money and invited Boss Nanho to accept 500,000. The young man promised that he would give twice as much if the gang could avenge him. However, the leader was angered by such a proposal since he did not intend to work for Sun. The rich man's son tried to justify himself and stated that he had offered to provide the group with a gift. But despite this, Boss Nanho told the young master to take his money and get out of his salon. The young man did not understand what was happening, but Brother Feng convinced him to leave, promising to talk later. Mr. Song hurried away as quickly as he could walk with the help of a crutch. The subordinate guessed that they would no longer work with a young man who could not give anything but money. However, Brother Feng was more interested in what they were going to do with that guy who was rowdy in the salon. Boss Nanho was not ready to forgive someone who broke the rule of their gang and was eager to take revenge. The next day, the physical education teacher spent his working hours at school as usual. In the middle of the day, the director called him into her office to ask how things were going. Chung did not immediately understand what she meant, so the mother reminded him that the grandfather's order was the #1 authority. Concerned, Jiang replied that he always remembered the order but could not rush in such delicate matters. The woman demanded that her son give her at least some success in relationships with colleagues. The blonde noticed how the former soldier blushed at the mention of the kiss, and she was amused by it. She also reminded the young man that goddesses have no shortage of admirers, and Cheng promised that he was doing everything he could. Suddenly, the director remembered the news she wanted to share with her son. The former soldier felt very clearly that he would not like what she had to say. And so it was, since the woman appointed Chinro as his mentor in love. Mr. Zhang did not think that the younger sister could help in winning hearts in any way. He told his mother about this, but she was adamant and ordered him to appear at the first lesson that evening. The headmistress was sure that Chinro would teach Chen how to communicate with girls correctly. Thus, the former soldier had no choice, and he was obliged to meet with his sister. As evening fell, they met in the living room, and Jiang openly said that he did not think he needed the child's help. Chinro was outraged by this attitude and threatened to tell Dad that Chung refused to study. The physical education teacher did not like this situation, so he stopped Mrs. Jiang and promised to obey. The teenager blossomed before her eyes and stated that, as a teacher, she would monitor the success of her student. First of all, Chinro said that in order to start dating, you need to be able to understand the girl. The former soldier thought he was doing a great job of this, and the angry lady ordered him not to interrupt her. The teenager further said that the guy should understand what his companion is thinking about. Chinro frowned and warned that if Chung thought he knew what his girlfriend was thinking, then he could always be wrong. The teenager said that all girls have weaknesses that make them easy to get hold of. The young lady moved on to the third important point, asking where her brother thought would be the best place to go on a date. The former soldier noticed that this question was very easy and suggested going to dinner, shopping, or a movie. Chinro shook her head and talked about how she would rather go to a place like a small park, especially when it gets dark. Chang didn't understand how this would help, and the sister shouted irritably that there was a greater chance of taking her companion's hand to calm her down. However, the teenager's most important advice was to be more active and show his dominant side. The teenager said that without being bossy, Jiang would not be able to forcefully kiss or kabadong. The former soldier did not understand what nonsense Chinro was talking about, but she claimed that she was teaching him the Bible of love. In the end, the young man suggested that the girl calm down and remember that she herself was still too young. Chinro shouted irritably that she would soon grow up and become more beautiful than the goddesses, and then left. Mr. Jiang was left alone and thought that perhaps some of the teenager's words might have meaning.